His being harsh with them wasn't because the food was simple, but because of their attitude towards the king. He adds that when greeting royalty from a foreign nation, they must be treated accordingly, questioning whether that might be related to their nation's status. Then, she apologizes, explaining that Lilia disrespected him due to her lack of knowledge, but he says it's fine, asking if her name is indeed Han, and she confirms that it is. Han Harry. He says he's heard about this world and about demons, wondering if those wicked things have appeared here, becoming increasingly serious, and she confirms it. So, it is said that Harry only has a mission to get him to join the Hunters Association, and she thinks she at least needs to get him to join her country, and she says that perhaps if His Majesty grants royal permission, the South Korean government will take care of him from now on. And so, she says that the reason for the 20th century intelligence war is to search for survivors, and no matter how much support is promised, you have to prevent them from joining other countries. But the protagonist knows that as long as he is in this world, he has a duty to go to the battlefield, and because he is an honorable knight, it is only right that he should fight. Then, she asks if he would like to affiliate with her hunting association. This is truly something out of this world. And he comments that the world outside his crib was incredibly vast, even considering the fact that he was still just a child. Just then, a maid arrives, surprised to see him on the windowsill. However, he says that the king cannot be a soldier in another nation's army, and that he will create a new order of knights there in that world. And the girl doesn't understand anything at all, and so, all she can do is nod, head over to the crazy stuff he's talking about. Then, she asks what the superiors said. This John S. asks what else they would say, since they need to give any support they can. And it's great that he didn't go to another country or join of the big guilds. And she is even more surprised to think that the government-affiliated association would need to bow down to him. So, she says it's all the fault of those bastards in the big guilds who keep showing off their power and money. And Johnson says that, now that he's touched on that subject, the Phoenix Guild is around. Then, they hear a huge beep, and they are both surprised. And it is said that it's an urgent message about a dungeon break in the Rune Plains. And Johnson says that, if a dungeon break occurs in an agricultural area, the demonic element will paralyze food production. But Rari asks if the S-rank hunter Leong 1-star isn't in this Phoenix Guild. S. Leong 1-star is, saying that there's no way he wouldn't be able to stop an orange portal. And Joao S. says he's sure those unfortunate people have a different plan, because they need to stop this quickly. So, they continue, cursing those guys from the Phoenix Guild. The protagonist overheard everything, understanding all that was said behind the door, and notices that they seem to be in trouble, because if a dungeon break occurs and the ground becomes infected, the crops don't grow. And, as expected, this place doesn't have what he has, which is sacred energy, and he asks Demera if she is okay. Demera herself is still in the sacred realm he came from. And at that moment, there, where the dungeon break is happening in the middle of that field, that same S-rank hunter is present, and they arrive asking what the hell is going on. He sees that Jansa is from the association, noticing that he's there together with the newbie Hanari as well, and he thinks that bastard let the dungeon break on purpose. They did this simply because they didn't accept his request. And so, he says that the Phoenix Guild has continually been asking for an exemption from, and he realizes that his adventure ended all too quickly, and she starts telling him that it's dangerous there, taking him away and saying that his lordship, the Grand Duke, will kill him. And he says he found out through his family that he was taxes on portal profits, and they've made a lot of profit from the byproducts obtained from the portals, such as magic crystals and monster materials. And he says that they wanted to receive an exemption from paying taxes, worth 1 trillion, and they already have many benefits, like being a large guild, but to think they did something like this just because they were rejected is too much. And Harry talks to Lee, saying that they need to close the portal now. Really. And today marks a week, and if they leave it like that, something bad will happen. But Lee says he knows this, and the authority over the auctioned portal will be handed over to someone else. So he asks what he can do, because the members of his guild are very injured, and it will be difficult to carry out a raid in this state. And he says that they will try to do it tomorrow, but they don't know what will happen. And she asks if they don't have a shred of patriotism, saying that he knows very well what will happen if Ronan's planets become infected. And he asks, so what if they do? Asking why she is being so childish. Speaking to Harry, he says that he said this in last year's project, saying that in this world, money and power are justice. And the protagonist appears there, saying that she is very superficial and old-fashioned, and then she sees Lion calling them, Your Majesty. But then he reminds her not to quote a king's name so casually when he only allows her to address him by his title. Then, He asks who this is, commenting that he looks like a Westerner, and the protagonist simply tells him to shut up, asking how dares a mouse to address him like that. So, he doesn't understand anything, asking what that bastard's problem is, considering he's talking to one of the world's top 20 S-rank hunters and the master of a top 10 rat guild. And he asks if the protagonist wants to die, invoking his firepower. Hari asks Hunter Le to stop and not get involved, explaining that he is a survivor, which surprises Le. Then, he stops immediately, saying that it was Rud who claimed to be Leong in the Phoenix Guild, suggesting he might have come from a gray portal, but the protagonist declares that a king does not repeat himself. Kagan, walking over, comments that Keely had to speak up. He asks John S. to explain the problem, saying he doesn't know the part of the Grand Duchy, which was a well-known fact throughout the kingdom. He apologizes to the nanny in that language as well, and he says that he was the son of Grand Duke Dragonia in the kingdom of Leon Har, in other words, a duke, and so, at the age of 8, portal details, so he should give him a good summary, and Johnson is surprised that he's willing to help. Harry prepares to speak, explaining that it's a dungeon break, and when a break happens, a bunch of elements. Demons emerge and infect the earth. Crops don't grow in the infected land, and she explains that the Ronin Plains are an important agricultural area, which is why the situation is so serious. And well, now the demonic energy from the portal is contaminating the earth. The protagonist then asks what the solution is. She says it's to purify the infection and complete the dungeon as quickly as possible. They need to eliminate the dungeon entirely. The protagonist says he understands, because the problem there is the infected land and the growth of the portal. So he simply orders his army to be summoned because tomorrow, the moment the attack time limit for those insignificant beings expires, this king will personally take action. She asks if he's serious, and he confirms. However, before that, the king of a foreign nation cannot carry out any military activities in another territory as he pleases. He first needs to receive permission from the king of that nation. However, she doesn't quite understand this and says she thinks everything is fine, but he says that there are rules and a legitimate procedure for everything, asking how she can call herself a knight or a rival when does not comply with the laws of his nation, ordering him to hasten to send that message to his king. And, seeing all of that, he thinks that idiot over there is even worse than he is. And so, in the end, they sent a message, and the president had to respond. Then, Harry goes to the protagonist, saying that he had asked him to make the preparations. So, she did, but she questions how he is planning to use that thing on his hand, and says that his precious land is infected, and they need to purify it. But she asks what the deal is with that straw doll. She explains that Leon requested 2 things, and one of them was a straw doll, and he went with the girl to find out who the women who made the doll were, made of straw, and she shows them all, and says that the other requirement was that the people who made the doll had to be women who had given birth. He says it's okay to ask to see the dolls they made and explains that's how it happened. 8 years old, he receives his first sword and mentions that he began to learn swordsmanship in order to become a future knight of the kingdom. And upon discovering that he is about to become a knight just like the ones in fantasy stories, he wonders if he will use a sword imbued with ki and aura. That a doll-making competition arose in the middle of the plantations. He began to look at them one by one, thinking that it's impossible to imagine calling this strange metaphysical body a doll. It's too much. He tears it up, saying it was a failure, failing repeatedly. Even Hanar gets involved, but he questions whether he hadn't specified that it had to be women who had given birth, which irritates her. And so, after touching so many dolls, the person who caught Lon's attention was the 89th woman, a married woman. He is surprised to see the doll she made, and asks how many children she had given birth to. The lady replies that it was 12 children, and he is surprised that she gave birth. Origin to the lives of true patriots, saying that normally he would personally send knights with a medal as a gift. However, due to his current situation, he is unable to do so, asking her to forgive him and thanking her. Little lady, who becomes all giddy. So, when he picks up that doll, he goes to that field, next to a table and a candle, and declares that the conditions have been met, activating a magic within his well. He puts his hand inside that magic, pulling out the Holy Grail and addressing the mother of that fertile land, stating that the people of this land are offering her the harvest doll, and everyone around is surprised by what he is doing, pleading with her to please, to receive it. Then, the Holy Grail begins to shine, and everyone is confused until the light ceases and water flows from the cup. Hari is surprised that the cup is filling with water on its own, and the sun is rising as she overflows it. A red light colors the clouds, and a new era awaits its beginning, while the protagonist prays. However, the sun rising that day is unique and will mark a special beginning for that world, and he is surprised that the drops of water are entering the doll, becoming irritated by the ritual. And it's said that, at that moment, the doll stood up on its own and began to smile, talking to Leon Har. Then he exclaims, "Great mother of that land," speaking to Demera, the goddess of life and fertility. She tells him that it has been a while, and in front of everyone, a divinity descends upon that land. As he greets her, she says that this world is also being invaded by the as well, and he says that his master was a knight dismissed from the palace, the Holy Knight Sirgt Gotk. Then Sirgt Gotk says that he is sure that this is the goddess's will, saying that teaching him will be extremely rewarding. Evil, and the land is contaminated. He agrees, saying that there are also evil species on this land, but there is no deity present. He is very surprised as the protagonist says he fears that those inferior pigs and vulgar things might stain his eyes, and she says that ignorance and greed cannot always be associated with sin, as these are natural characteristics of a mortal, and she asks him what he plans to do now. And Lon thinks for a moment, saying that it is not difficult to blend in among the swordsmen, but a conqueror's authority is divine, and he will ensure that duty and authority are equal there, and he will teach the ignorant and guide them along the right path until a new pantheon arrives in this land. And she really likes that, asking if he doesn't have a request to make of her. And then she says they're ready. He talks to Demera, saying that the free citizens of this land are suffering because of an evil energy, and he is sure that this is not something she wants, but he asks her to please reclaim and purify that land. She says that he is the leader of his time, her champion, and that the earth of this world is not her body, and she will sow her divinity there and replace this thirsty land with her flesh. And so, she lets a drop of her life fall there. And he says that everything that walks on this earth will be his ally, and a torrent of sacred power surges forth, leaving everyone there quite surprised. And so the protagonist tells them to observe and learn, asking them, in their ignorance, to pay attention, because they are unable to understand or educate themselves. He explains that this is a world blessed with divinity, and all the crops grow wonderfully, newly born and prosperous, adding that this is the rightful duty of a living being, and none of them can believe how good the field has become. He states that this fertile land is proof of an eternal promise. At that moment, he is surprised that everything went wrong with his plan, but they tell them not to be deceived, explaining that crops grown with magic are poisonous, and he says he is sure they know this. However, Leon retorts that these crops are blessed with divinity and asks how he dares, saying that it is a pleasure to meet Lon, and the boy is very surprised by this title of Holy Knight, asking Gotk to take good care of him. He wonders what that title means, but is very angry with God, because after, to judge them as poisonous, and so Lee speaks of that straw doll, calling it stupid. However, Leon says that he only forgives ignorance once, ordering him not to defile the goddess with his filthy tongue. Then, Lee is overcome with fear of that threat, thinking this can't be happening, and says his plans are about to be ruined because of him, and he can't let that happen, saying he will expose his blatant lies, and that they still need proof and hope he cooperates for the good of the people. And then he says he's going to make Linhyo out to be a fraud, saying he'll provide the evaluator. So he prepares himself, getting close to the plant and casting his magic. Then he gets scared, thinking this can't be true, because that is blessed rice. And the description says that it is blessed by the deity Dea, the goddess of life and fertility, and even third-degree illnesses are cured with the continuous consumption of this rice. Then they notice that its rank is rare, and all that rice is of rare rank, being able to cure third-degree diseases and even cancer, and nobody believes it. Looking at that one, Joao Sultrella, from the boss's house. So they get ready to make the rice, and when he eats it, he can't believe it, but his stamina recovery rate is increased by 100 per minute with that rice, and the mana recovery rate is also increased, at 50 per minute and lasting 8 hours. Jondo, hearing that this is basically a buff, wonders how mere rice can be equivalent to a booster worth 3 million per bottle. So, Harry runs to him saying that this is a bombastic information. Then, he asks her to at least finish chewing before speaking, and the girl starts to do so, saying that she was curious and ate an insect. He is surprised that the girl did this, and she says that he simply received a buff, and none of them believe it, because if this blessing really is all over the land, it's a free power-up. So, it is not strange that all living beings are also blessed, and so, they order them to get as much as they can, as they will enter the portal completely buffed, and the motivation of the association's hunters increases as a result. And Demera talks to Prota, and he responds to her. She says it looks like she's already done what she was supposed to, classes started. Gotk put him through absurd training. He starts complaining about child abuse at the age of 14 while carrying a huge rock on his back. He says that a holy knight really was a monster in human skin, due there, and now she needs to go back. And he understands this, telling her that he will never forget the divine love she bestowed upon them. And so, she projects herself, touching Prota's head, saying that she's going to tell him one more thing, asking him to make sure he eats, and then he drops the doll. Then Hari asks him what happened, and he talks about divine power, saying that there is no God in this world, and she says she isn't sure about that. The pro says that a proper world and a proper life are made with divine power, and that they, the Rachis, had better keep that in mind, because now that the soldiers are ready, they will enter the portal. But then, the man, he asks Ali if everything will be okay, because at this rate, his plan will fall apart, and he talks about that damned survivor, asking where he came from, because if it weren't for him, the government would have no choice but to fulfill his request, and his wish is that he would die in the portal. But then he thinks of something, thinking that this isn't a bad idea. Then his subordinate asks the guildmaster what he's going to do, and he tells the boy that he doesn't need to worry, as this portal has somehow already been attacked. And he says yes, because the middle part was a little difficult, but he thinks of something and remembers that there is only one rank A Han, and the leader says that that wretch is probably just a support class who casts the blessing, and they're betting he's rubbish in combat, meaning they'll definitely fail. So, inside the portal, it is said that there is a monster that cannot be defeated. Using normal means, the dungeon break is beginning, and the risk is death. All living beings within the portal now have a time limit. Inside that place, the Prota hangs out with all those hunters, including John, goes ahead, leading the whole world. As he walks with them, he says that, in other words, most of the portals will close before they complete the mission or defeat the boss, and he says that the duel with the boss is something he liked. But Rari thinks she failed to tell them that generally everyone just rushes in. Then the Prota notices something there, a skeleton, and says he knows that they said they tried to complete the dungeon before, but it seems that, of human, and that it was extremely difficult to qualify to be one, and so Gotk asks him to take another lap with that huge rock on his back. He says he needed to complete missions to train and become a knight of the Grota. There are many more monsters than he had thought, but Harry tells him that this is the characteristic of the dungeon. He questions her about it, and she says that while the number of monsters generally decreases as you defeat them, like in most portals, in the case of skeletons or zombies, and even depending on demons, as long as the boss remains alive, they will continue to regenerate without stopping. And Leon thinks this is interesting because it means that things will only end if they defeat the boss. Finally understanding and thinking that this must be one of those dungeons with a boss, the girl says that this is probably it, and maybe it's a necromancer who controls the skeletons. That's her bet. But the system sends a message saying that Commander Dullahan is advancing with his troops, ordering them to defeat the Knight Commander within 3 hours, and everyone feels a shock of mana. And John, Sue gets angry with Lean, saying that he should have warned them about something like this, since he knew about it beforehand, and everyone is afraid because of it. Dolan appears right in front of them with all his skeletons, and the time to defeat that horde is decreasing, and they think there are too many skeletons. They ask if they should distribute the potions, but John So tells him to focus on distributing them to the higher ranks, and then asks Maciek how many archers and mages. There, he says that he sees 30 archers and 2 mages now pointing their bows. So, João S. says that those with sniper skills should take care of the ranged mobs first, and anyone with a shield should prevent their advance. The skeletons then come up as he wishes everyone good luck, and a battle of attrition against that thing begins. John S. says they're stronger than he thought, and he starts to think that orange portals are really different, as he attacks some monsters, managing to kill them, thinking that they are not that difficult to deal with for a B-rank tank like him, and that he is advancing in the middle of all those monsters. But he notices something behind him catching his attention, being surprised that, even though they are mere skeletons, they have some very advanced spells, and he thinks he needs to get their attention by asking everyone to go up, but the kingdom, through his experience and honor. As he fought with Gotk, sparring in practice fights, he improved little by little, and the boy says that, to become a holy knight, you must be chosen by the Holy Grail, and monsters don't stop and throw their magic right in the middle. He says everything is fine, saying it was just a scratch, and says he knows that equipment is expensive, but Doan appears right in front of Jonso, and he stops immediately. Seeing that, the monster and Dolan throws his weapon upwards, hitting him and sending him flying. He crashes against the wall, completely broken, dropping both his shield and his hammer to the ground. And Rari shouts, "Manager Kim." The girl beside her says, They need to save him, she tells Han, saying that they should call for reinforcements from the reserve force, and she believes that's what the reserve force is for. They need to help them now, as the monster is wiping the floor with everyone there. So she thinks that even though he is the king of Leonhardt who defeated the archdemon, she has no other option now, and asks Leon Hayes to help. Then he becomes somewhat apathetic and says that a king would never join such a petty fight like this. And she questions, "What do you mean?" And he tells them to find a way to build their honor, saying that he can't believe she would try to force him to help in a fight against those rotten bones, adding that this is also rude to the goddess. He can't bring himself to watch any more of this, but the girl questions what the hell he's talking about, and the little mage beside her asks what they're going to do, and she thinks she doesn't have time to waste, because that man intends to help and doesn't seem to have any ulterior motive other than Dulan, and she realizes that they will need to stop Dwerham first. So, she says that she will take care of the boys while the rest help the allies, General Kim, and so on. She goes all out against the main monster, passing through the skeletons, stepping on them, and jumping to attack him directly. But her attack is stopped by that huge great sword, and she realizes that he blocked it, noticing that she needs to do what she can to keep him away from the army. But the monster is face to face with her, and she is startled, wondering what it is, because he threw his head to block her vision and is preparing a punch, wondering what kind of undead fights like that. As he prepares, he hits her with everything he has, flinging her far away, but she thinks she still managed to get away with it. However, the monster doesn't give her time to think, going, "Subscribers added here on the channel. I will add 20 chapters to our special. The size of the video depends on you. We started at 279,000 and are now at 283,000. For every 10,000 subscribers, meaning at 289,000, drink holy water." And even though he trained excessively, Gotk still handled the boy very easily. He says that, in addition to all of this, as Dragonia's son, he also needs to learn everything about becoming a Grand Duke, and so, up with everything again. But still, she thinks her plan was a success, as she managed to separate him from the rest. Then, she apologizes, saying that the range of her abilities is a little too great, opening a gigantic blaze at that monster, who begins swinging his sword to extinguish the flames, and she confidently states that he's done for, as this attack should finish him off. However, the monster retaliates, hurling his weapon at the girl, catching her off guard, which he manages to block with the flat of his sword, defending himself from the assault, and he realizes that the monster's stance is far too skilled, and he is nearly killed. Just then, Prota yells out, exclaiming that the battle was impressive. Everyone pauses to see what he's referring to, and explains that, based on the monster's unique one-handed swordsmanship, he's certain that he was once a noble knight, requesting the monster to allow him to apologize, because to think that he would mistake a great knight like him for one of the undead is simply unacceptable, and he declares to the unknown knight that he, King Leonhar Harthi, will grant him the honor of a challenge. The girl, along with Dolan, finds this incredibly bizarre. Elon declares that there's no need for further casualties. They will conclude this fight with a noble duel between two knights. Consequently, she is astonished that he challenged the boss to a face-to-face duel. And even the skeletons, they don't understand anything, and she thinks there's no chance this will work, but Dolan buys into the protagonist's idea, handing over his head to him and accepting the duel. And so, the skeletons begin to make room for the two to duel, and the protagonist comes face to face with Dolan, saying that a knight cannot continue with his head down, and stating that he is sure that he uses dual wielding, and that it won't be a real battle if he only uses a weapon. And so, Dolan finds this strange, and Harry talks to him. He questions what she means, and she says that Dolan won't die unless they cut off his head. But he asks, "So what?" questioning if that's important. And the girl says that it definitely is, asking how he's going to defeat Dolan without decapitating him, and he actually gives his head to one of the skeletons, using dual wielding. And the protagonist says that it doesn't matter, because what decides? Gotk tells him to keep his eyes on his opponent until the very end, but the boy is blown away with a single strike. Gotk then discusses the lessons required to become the Grain's successor, in addition to the training to become a holy knight. It is the victory and honor of the knight. And so, they come face to face, and the protagonist introduces himself as the first knight of the goddess of light and justice, Archduke of Dragonia, and King of Leonhar, summoning that honorable knight for a duel. Then, Dulan holds the sword with all his might, preparing to attack Prota, going at him in one fell swoop. And the boy waits for the attack, as Dulan brings his sword down with everything he has, but Prota just raises his hand, stopping Dulan's sword very calmly, as if nothing was happening. Then, he swings Dulan's sword, throwing it directly to the ground and causing his attack to fail completely. And so, he lightly touches Dulan, winning the first time, and Dulan prepares to move backwards, opening space and preparing to attack again, going even harder, using a two-handed crosscut. And Harry thinks that if he blocks, something like that, he will end up dead. However, Prota says that Dulan's steps are too light, still managing to turn a monster upside down, completely disarming him and taking him to the ground. And no one understands this, because they didn't even see it. However, Harry manages to keep up with the movements. He is surprised that she was able to see it, and so it is said that Harry was the only one who truly understood what was happening in the battle, as Prota changed the balance of the weight on Dulan's guard. Moment the attack connected with the blade. And furthermore, he managed to make a crosscut, something that no one would even attempt, and he goes to Dulan again, touching him and saying, "This is the second time." So, he orders him to quickly get into position, and Harry thinks that this was only possible because the protagonist is so powerful. Then, Dulanhan begins to think, saying that it has been a while since he was treated like a proper knight and called for a duel. And so they continue fighting, with Dunhan looking like a child fighting against his father, and he says that anyone would think it's just a trick to avoid a difficult situation, especially hearing the suggestion that he gets off the horse, but he thinks it's nonsense and prepares to attack the protagonist again, telling them to look at this knight, this dignified posture, and the look of a veteran who has experienced countless battles and shining aces. He says that if a god truly exists, he wants to beg for salvation from the torment he's enduring, as he collapses with his arm trembling from the relentless beating. However, while on the ground, he reveals that he doesn't believe in any religion, in search of honor and excellence, and the protagonist says he will try to stop this attack, and so the monster attacks again, but the protagonist deflects his attack very calmly, saying that this is the third time, and so, Dolan recognizes that the Prota is the pinnacle of a knight or a rival. Then, he asks himself if he will continue, while Dolan says that he is a king of knights who must be challenged and revered. He doesn't want to use his powers of necromancy, and wants to fight this man as many times as he can, like a knight, in a noble way, charging forward once again, and he keeps trying to hit the Prota in every way, but Leon defends his attacks very easily, and he says he wants to continue without necromancy, just his blade against him, just like when he used to duel against famous knights and when he still walked around the world with honor, just as he had forgotten to do. But, as the battles continue, he ends up losing his sword, and it is thrown away, stuck in the ground, announcing the end of the duel. And so Prota says, this is the 10th time, saying that his swordsmanship is becoming more precise, wondering if by any chance, he has remembered the memories of his past life. And Dulan confirms this, thinking more and more that the Prota is an honorable gentleman, and says that he returned to the glorious days of the past. And then he asks if Duanhan intends to continue, but Duanhan denies it, calling the skull that holds his head closer. She brings the head, and he takes it, offering it to the protagonist. He questions himself, how long he had been carrying out massacres, and how long he continued fighting without honor. He wonders if he can finish this cursed journey, there would be no greater joy. Lifting and offering his head to Leon, he then thinks it's incredible, saying he's amazed that he's regained his honor, saying he'll pray for him, and that if there's a God he believes in, he hopes that God will grant his soul rest. And if not, he prays that the goddess guides him to the end of the garden and hopes to find him one day in the banquet hall of the gods, purifying Dolan and commanding there to be light, and so he dissolves. But as he dissolves, that dark energy leaves his body, revealing. So, at 16 years old, he's caught in the middle of a downpour, eating dried meat, and saying it's somewhere around there, searching for where his mission begins. He says he wandered the world seeking recognition from the goddess, all to his true form. Then he prays that glory remains with Leon Dragon and Leon Hars. So, after a while, they are outside, and Harry notices that he really kept his promise, and Joao Sor realizes that won't sell, that he actually ended everything with a duel. Then he wonders what that light was. So, Joao S thinks that maybe it was that divine power he was talking about, since that must have been why the undead disappeared after the duel, and Harry thinks that he should have used that ability sooner then. However, the protagonist says that if he had used it, then that honorable knight would have met his end at the hands of a necromancer. She is surprised to see him there, and the protagonist says that a knight lives by honor, and honor comes from actions, and actions come from willpower. And the Dullahan received what he deserved as a noble knight. But anyway, he says he's going to get his spoils, and the girl finds it strange, and he says that where there is a battle, there are spoils, and finders, keepers, losers, weepers, and goes to collect everything that dropped from the monster, the pearl, the cloak, and also his sword. And so Johns is surprised, saying that this is trash, stomping on and destroying the jewel, ruining everything, leaving everyone around in despair because of what he just did. He says that these types of items only cause chaos, demonstrating the disgust he feels. And the end result was that they obtained all the drops, except for one, which turned to dust. Thus, Ronan's portal is completed. After a while, Harry can no longer bear to bring him food. It is said that it has been 4 days since Leon came to Earth. It hasn't been long, but a lot has happened, and the girl just thinks she's tired, since she first had a small problem because of taxes. He asked how dare she collect taxes from a king of another nation. She says that he can pay with monostones, but he says that a king doesn't count his coins, questioning why they are discussing matters that should be resolved by his subordinates, and that enough about money, as it is not his job. The girl didn't understand anything. Become a holy knight after accepting his mission. But he wonders how one actually gains recognition from the goddess. And so, arriving at the village, everything is engulfed in flames, and the situation looks dire, and so, they gain new followers, because divine power was introduced to Earth. Then, Senor Genio asks how they should pay their tithe, and the protagonist states that the amount is 19 trillion, ordering them to pay 90% of their harvests as tithe, and asks what they think of this generosity. But Senor Genio says that both taxes and the cost of living are already very expensive, and 90% of the harvest income would be too much to give, and the protagonist, as a follower of the goddess, questions why he worries about going hungry, since welfare, the cost of living, and food will be provided by his guild. Then, she talks about the blessed rice, saying that it has an insanely high appreciation value. The gentlemen don't even believe it. It is said that every 80 kilograms of rice is worth 150 million won, and they are shocked by all that money, questioning how much they would have even if they gave 90% as a tithe, and they begin to pray to the protagonist's goddess. Still, the biggest problem was Lon's house. Then, he tells her that they are in the middle of a battlefield, asking how she can grant him a place that doesn't have a single work of art, and the girl can't take it anymore, and says that he furiously demanded a luxurious bed, servants who were always on call, and a work of art that he could admire at any time. And so, she starts making calls, apologizing for calling at this hour. So, Harry had to search for 5-star hotels until 2 a.m. just to rent a suite. And so, she begs him to please sleep, kneeling down for forgiveness, as they promise to have a painting or a piece of pottery in the room. And so, we arrive at the present moment. The girl is still tired, and she starts looking for the CEO, introducing herself. He tells her to come in, and she asks if he's feeling okay, and Luli, with that wonderful view, speaks. Yes, while the girl brings his food, she says it's time for breakfast, so he asks if she's already eaten, and she says no, explaining that she should eat when she can, and not skip meals. However, everyone pleading for help, saying more orcs are coming. He says that if you continue to accumulate fame and good deeds, the goddess will eventually come to you. However, he thinks this is ridiculous. And in that village, Grut speaks with, is full of hatred, because she is only doing this because of that jerk, and she brings him a huge feast to eat, saying that it looks good and that she'll have a sandwich or something later. So, he tells her to. Sitting down, she gets all flustered, wondering if he's going to share his food with her. Then, she gets ready to eat, but he questions what she's doing. She questions what he's saying, and he asks what she is doing instead of making sure the ribs are safe to eat. And the girl doesn't understand at all, because she thought he was going to share them with her. But he asks, in what kind of country do kings and commoners eat together? And the girl once again gets completely lost in his talk. Sometime later, in another corner, they say that the Hunters Association has decided to provide financial support and housing assistance. And it won't be as good as the palace, but they guarantee that he will be comfortable. And the protagonist thinks it's very considerate, since he can't demand too much as a guest, and he'll leave her to take care of everything. Then, she talks about the distribution of the spoils, and he says he already told her to take care of it, but he mentions that he liked the cloak, so she should leave it with him, and she simply agrees. And so they arrive at the house where he's going to live. He gets out acting arrogant, and she mentions that the place is near the Hunters Association and has an L-Mart on top, so it's convenient to ask him if it's okay, and Proto even approves, but upon entering and seeing the artwork they left behind, he questions what the hell it is. But inside, someone appears to talk to. Hanha is calling her, and she thinks it must be a secret location, so she asks who he is. He says it's a coincidence, mentioning that he's from the Dom Jun group, the director of Comida do Futuro, Dom Jonkjan Cha. She's surprised that this group is there, explaining that the Dom Jun group is one of the 3 largest monopolistic groups in the nation, and the director of such a group was there waiting. He then begins to look at her with a treacherous, snake-like gaze, Proto, thinking he must be the famous survivor, and she responds that she knew, because he was aware they were watching. Then, he says it's a pleasure to meet Leon, and Leon lags slightly behind, but soon becomes irritated that Mr. Guilds, surrounded by many orcs, wonders if this is the end, and asks the goddess to take care of them. The monsters close in. The protagonist reflects on having had countless opportunities to use his. Merchant shook his hand. Sometime later, after apparently kicking him out, Harry says that this place is what the association will provide for him for a year, and the association will take care of the rent and the bills, so he doesn't have to worry about them. So, she tells him that there's room service and maids available, so he can use those services as much as he likes. Meanwhile, she thinks to herself that it was a relief, because information about the survivors is top secret. In a situation where Bark John Chan's intentions were unknown, it was a relief to Hanhar that Lin ignored Director Park at that moment, but she asks why he wanted to see it, and the pro says, there's only one thing a merchant would want, but he was probably after profit, and the girl doesn't quite understand, but ends up remembering the rice, thinking it's because of the blessed rice in the plains of Rona, because, due to the urgency of the situation, control over the information wasn't very good, and a streamer recorded the entire scene. The association asked him to delete the video, but he posted it again, and she is surprised that he created so many accounts to post the same thing. And so all the blessed rice was revealed to everyone, and Park was looking at it, cursing everyone and everything for not paying attention to him, and he asks his scientist if he is certain that the rice's effects are real, and the scientist confirms it. Then, he points out that he hasn't tested it on any humans yet, questioning if there's any guarantee it will work on them. Humans just because it worked on mice. And so he ponders for a bit, but then another girl appears, speaking with the director, saying that in order to obtain more information about the rice, they went to meet the owner of the rice field. But, apparently, a dog that was nearly at death's door recovered out of nowhere, and people with chronic inflammation and sinusitis felt better immediately after consuming the rice. And all kinds of illnesses in the village, whether mild or severe, were cured after people ate that rice. They don't have any information from human trials, but the effects have basically already been proven, and he really likes that, noting that the sword, which is why he was worried. Then, he screams at those things, demanding how they dare invade the kingdom's territory with their filthy feet, all while tearing the orcs in half. He declares that the kingdom has too many enemies. Rice really works, and that if it weren't for that miserable psychopath, he could already be making a profit. Wondering how he dares to call the director of the Doom Group Hellas, the merchant. Then the girl speaks with him, saying that they should get their hands on it as soon as possible, because the power of that rice is limitless. He says he knows this and is going to meet with him again, becoming increasingly angry as he remembers how he dared to despise them. He despises him and says that he thinks he is all that just because of that rice. He messed with the wrong enemy, cursing the protagonist once again, and saying that he is just like the other survivors and those idiots who think that the world where they live is the best of all. He says he's going to overwhelm him with a culture shock, cursing the protagonist once again. Thus, it is said that, after returning to Earth, Leon defined 3 objectives. The first is to spread faith and divinity. There are many followers of gods on Earth, but what really matters is that divine power doesn't exist. A god should embrace faith and bless the world, but instead, humans are getting sick, and the lands are becoming contaminated. So, in order to use divine power, a new faith is necessary. Therefore, more people need to believe in the new divinity. The second objective is to reform the Knights Templar, and in this world, there is no organization of warriors who wield divine power. This is the guardian of the Holy Grail, Leon Hart, who is considered a demigod. He has the power to create the Knights Templar, who would be the saints. They are God's knights who use divine power to bring terror to the evil ones. But he also has another goal, to massacre all the evil that thrives in these lands, recovering divine power and rebuilding the Knights Templar. And he says that he has a reason to spread the faith, because in addition to maintaining balance and order within the Pantheon, in order to establish the Knights Templar, he even thinks that perhaps it is too much to want the Knights Templar in a place like that, but that doesn't matter to him, because he just has to fulfill his duty. But then Harry approaches him, saying that someone has officially requested a meeting with him, so he thinks that there is no reason not to listen to them if they have submitted to the formal procedures. And so, At 20 years old, he is already much stronger. He says that he finally met with the goddess, and she recognizes him as the son of Wolf-Freak Dragonia, Leon Dragonia. He realizes they weren't lying, because so they meet Proto once again. And Park thanks him for allowing this meeting, speaking to Proto and addressing him as Your Majesty. And Leon watches him, looking completely arrogant, and Park thinks that if it's for the sake of business, he's willing to bow down to this idiotic weirdo. So, he mentions he brought a small gift this time, pulling a suitcase into their meeting, asking him to accept it, and saying that he will really be surprised when he sees what it is, as it's a high-end luxury item that a degenerate would never dream of seeing. He won't be able to go back once he experiences it. He'll make him beg to become his manager, and the protagonist says that it's alright, because since he put in so much effort, he'll accept this gift. And Park is surprised, asking what's with this attitude, as if he's doing him a favor by accepting it. He asks why he doesn't take a look at what it is, as he's sure Leon will like it. He gets irritated that he has to explain the proper etiquette to him, asking Han to open it, and she agrees, going to the suitcase, clicking it, and opening that compartment, which releases a crazy amount of smoke, and she recognizes what it is, and Park starts saying that they are elite weapons, the pride of his group, and he says that he can choose the one that pleases him the most. Then, Han is surprised that it's all of them, questioning whether they are truly unique rank items crafted by the master artisan of Group 21, and he confirms that they are, indeed, the cream of the crop of unique rank items. He also mentions hearing that, from now on, Leon will be working as a hunter, so they will be a great help to him. Rario is surprised that he's simply giving away these unique rank weapons from Joao's group, stating that weapons of this caliber are so rare that not even money can buy them, as she's only ever seen these things in YouTube videos back when she was a student. However, the protagonist asks where he's supposedly meant to use these low-level weapons. Then, PK is taken aback by what he said, along with Harry, who asks how he could call them, thus, low-level. He questions how it would be possible to forge a good sword without the aura of the stars or a divine blessing, asking if they only use weapons to hunt beasts. Then, he questions what the protagonist is talking about, wondering whether really was a goddess. The goddess says she will give him a mission to prove his honor and his faith. He accepts Ariana's orders, becoming even more surprised that the goddess actually exists. He reflects that, after working with a slave, the boy expects him to dry the swords like peppers in the sun and pray over them. The protagonist begins to suspect that Par is being dishonest, but he claims it's a misunderstanding, and the protagonist retorts that salespeople are always obliged to show off his items wherever they go, saying that these weapons are only good enough to kill chickens and cows, but he'll give them a chance by pulling out his own sword. They are surprised that he is pulling a sword out of thin air, an ancient sword, so he wonders if that's all the protagonist has, questioning if he really underestimates his weapons that much. He gets pissed off about this, saying he would like to see what his sword can do. He asks manager Raro to do something, and she asks what it is. Then he asks if she would like to test one of these weapons. The girl is all surprised, looking at the protagonist, who senses this. Then she grabs one of the weapons, taking it away, saying that this is the weapon she admired for 4 years, the sword of the horny master Parkejino Amanheser. She says she can feel the power of it because it really feels like she absorbed the portal's special dense solar energy for 10 whole days. She then asks if she can really use it, but the protagonist questions why she would need permission to swing a toy around, and Parke gets more and more pissed off, and the girl then prepares to attack using it. In this scene, the protagonist simply raises his sword, waiting for the attack, and the girl prepares her assault, announcing that she's coming, descending with everything towards the protagonist's sword. But Dawn simply shatters, leaving Park stunned. Park is very surprised by this, because the protagonist's sword is intact while hers is in several pieces, and the protagonist comments that she's worse than he thought. He calls it a huge waste of time, saying he'll shorten the meeting, giving Park 3 minutes. He's at a loss for words, because Dawn broke, which was the strongest weapon in Jun's group. He doesn't believe it's possible, then figures that the protagonist has something else, saying he'd like to patent the rice grains, showing all his sincerity and revealing what he wants, and the protagonist is questioning what he's talking about. He says they will pay for him, of course. He states that, according to his calculations, they say he's worth around 180 billion won, but we've added 20 chapters to our January special, a holiday special for you to watch while you're relaxing at the beginning of the year. So, the more the subscriber count grows, the bigger the special will be. And please guys, take it easy. For several years, he became a holy knight, finally reaching the point where he needed to be. After that, he attacked and attacked and attacked relentlessly. He attacked orcs, tore goblins to pieces, and put an end to the evil cult. He thinks that, of course, he's worth much more than that, and rice grains that can even cure cancer would never be worth so little. But there's no way that idiot understands the value of 180 billion won. He'll go crazy as soon as he explains how much it's really worth. That's right. But the next person says that he wants to buy the rice with money, and Park responds that he already took it, confirming that's the case, and adds that, of course, he has to sign a contract stating that Jum's group will have a monopoly on everything. As he continues to berate Leon in front of him, he calls him an imbecile merchant, treating him extremely harshly, invoking his bloodlust, asking if he dares to insult the deity, and witnessing the power of his aura, which gets to the point where they can't breathe. Park asks, "What is this?" And he becomes desperate, seeing that the protagonist is truly ready to kill them, seeing death in their eyes. Eli once again calls him stupid, saying that he just confessed his sins. Then he kneels down, almost crying, saying that he truly doesn't know where he went wrong. And the protagonist asks how ignorant and uncivilized he can possibly be, freeing him from that mana pressure, allowing them to breathe. And he says that the harvest he's referring to was cultivated in the blessed lands of the beloved goddess Demera. Then he explains that she bestowed this blessing as a reward to the farmers who break their backs working in the fields. He says that this is not something that can be bought with money, and that all that is needed is a grateful heart and faith as payment. And, since that's the case, he speaks to that creature, an inferior being who only seeks profit and deceives others, saying that he will question him about wanting the divine products of a goddess he doesn't even believe in. Park has no way to respond and simply leaves. But after they leave, Harry asks if it's okay to let him go like that, and talks to Prota, mentioning that he knows he's just a merchant from his perspective, but that he still wields considerable influence. Prota replies that it's not even worth it to worry about it, because he's not the type of person who lets himself be affected by someone so vulgar. He then asks if what he ordered is ready, and she replies that the association called, inquiring if he's also planning to take the test. Eventually, he rose to become a war knight of the kingdom, granting him the authority to gather other knights. And he went on to massacre 700,000 orcs, including women and children. Yet, those damned green creatures just keep appearing, saying that, if it's him taking it, things will be easier. But he asks what kind of absurdity this is, questioning if they expect him, the king, to take the test. The girl doesn't quite understand, so she asks him why he wanted to. He says it's in order to look for it, solder the cores, and he will test them. But she says that's kind of impossible. But then he simply tells her to make it possible. And the girl starts to cry inside because of the crazy thing he is doing. She has to do it. And so, a while later, some people who are going for the hunter test are joining together. He is an unaffiliated hunter, rank D, Goda. He talks to someone else who is also there, a little old man, and they come together. Inside, the little old man says that Dion sure tries hard. He asks how he's doing this year, asking if he thinks his rank will go up this time. He thinks he will do his best, but he asks, because he doesn't join his team. And then someone says that even those who don't try reach at least C rank, but he's been stuck in D rank for 10 years. And the old man says that he is dedicated and good at his job and bets that he will become a real X pretty quickly, and says that people might call it manual labor, but being on the mining team isn't bad. Then he says that this is true, because he was there for 10 years, but he wants to keep trying. A little more, because if it weren't for Hyde's money, it would be difficult to even pay the interest on his debts, but he can't give up, because this is for his family, and he needs to reach at least C rank to stop being dead weight. Then, they notice that there is a foreigner there, and, upon examining this stranger, they question whether he is European, speculating that perhaps he is a foreign official or something of that nature. But they also comment that he appears to be royalty, and everyone starts looking at the protagonist, and that man goes up to him, speaking to Leon in English, asking how he is doing. He doesn't even respond and asks who the man thinks he's talking to, and the man doesn't understand anything, being treated like rubbish, and saying that, apparently, he learned Korean in a very strange way. Som even agrees with that, but the protagonist looks directly at him and finds it strange, and he continues to stare very intently at the boy, and the man, of the boy, and he mentions feeling greatly invigorated by it. And so, at the age of 35, the living saint and demigod, Argem Majesty Leon Hart, passed away. This occurred while he was battling the archdemon summoned by the Empire, and asks what's wrong, and why Som is trembling, asking if he has a stomachache, but he is blue with fear, and asks what that was. Because he can't breathe, it's as if something is pressing down on him. something great that won't let him go, and so they call his name and tell him to go to interview room number 2. And he says he's going, but the protagonist just watches from afar, noticing that there are only good people there, and thinks that's not where he should be. He was looking for strong people, but even so, there is no one who can be his soldier, and it's a shame. And he thinks that, in the first place, the only people who come for that test are low-rank hunters or those who have only recently awakened. Then they call him too, asking him to head to the interview room. He thinks he can't expect great things right away, and actually goes to the room, entering and getting close to the examiners who why. They think his name is strange, and the crazy man simply asks everyone there to call him Your Majesty. And they even agree, joining in on the joke, and tell him to extend his hand over the test measuring device. And the protagonist looks at that, finding that thing strange, and starts looking at everything around there, also noticing a file with his information. So he calls that gentleman stupid, questions what the device is, and he asks how dare commoners try to test the honor of a man, knight. And he says that they aren't taking the test, insisting it's just the device. However, the protagonist argues that only honorary knights and gods can measure a knight's power, questioning how a machine dares to try to test a knight's honor. And the man doesn't understand anything, so he asks why he's even there, and the protagonist is looking for useful soldiers, but even the judges there are horrible. They find it strange that he's acting this way, being a recruiter, and he says he didn't like anyone there, asking what the next test is. They tell him there's a test in a portal, and he says that's right, stating that true abilities are only revealed through training and real-life situations, saying that he'll take a look. The man still doesn't understand anything, and asks if he means he wants to participate. Upon entering a portal, they ask if he's dizzy or anything, because a headache was already bad enough, but now they also had demons running wildly all over the place. And that's precisely why humanity needed to believe in the gods and live devoutly. He was leading all the knights in the why. There are some who feel nauseous when passing through the portal, and that portal, they explain, portals that have already been completed are normally closed, but a select few remain open for situations like this. And this portal, they say, it's an example, and the guy at the beginning mentions that this year's ratings aren't much different from last year's. He needs to perform well there to achieve better results. Then, they notice what the inside looks like. And a girl notices that the place is very popular, but her friend asks Jim to turn off his cell phone. He notices that there are 2 newbies there and a little old man too, who comments that the air there is very good. He realizes that the gentleman must be in his 60 seconds and assumes they are all rank D or C. He then spots that other guy, the foreigner he saw earlier at the reception, who walks in looking stylish. Not that, considering his age, he is probably a newbie either. Apart from that old man, there are only newbies. So, the protagonist observes everyone there, while wondering if everything will be alright. And then, his team calls the leadership, saying that they will introduce themselves before defining their positions, introducing himself and saying that this is his 10th year as a hunter, and he is a warrior, and his main position is dealer, which is a short-range damage dealer. And the other one introduces himself, like Shin Tyron. He awakened that year, and uses the spear and shield, and the girl is his sister, Shinan, who says she mainly uses daggers, but is also learning to use a bow and arrow. So, Dion notices that they are newbies who haven't even dollars. They still haven't discovered their main weapons and he gets scared, asking if they have already been to the training center. So, they say they attended one for 3 months. His sister starts teasing him, and Dion notices that they are new and questions the man. The little man says that this is his 15th year, and his name is Ojentai, that his weapon is a gauntlet, and that he awakened a while ago, but was recently fired. He says he has little experience, compared to his age, and besides, his weapon is a gauntlet, so it will be difficult to compensate for the range that a sword or spear can cover. So, he thinks that, finally, he will be the protagonist, and everyone looks at him thinking that, burial of the former king, and he grows increasingly irritated with the Empire's mages, stating that, on top of everything else, they needed to elect a Holy Knight to become the successor to King Leon Hart, who died with honor. And he is a foreigner, questioning whether the protagonist knows how to speak Korean, but he just watches them all, saying he doesn't. And then someone asks, "What do you mean?" And he says he can't use a sword made for hunting dragons in order to kill chicken. And then someone gets a scare while journeying, during which they learn to speak Korean. And so, they say that in this test you only need to hunt 50 kobolds, and sometimes a gnoll appears in the field. So, if he thinks it's too dangerous, he will interfere, and therefore, they shouldn't worry and just focus on showing their skills. And so, Dasom starts looking at the boy who is acting all love-struck behind him, wondering if everything will be okay in this test, because, not long ago, he asks the protagonist if he didn't bring any weapons, and so, the girl talks to him, calling him handsome, asking if he wants to borrow one of her weapons, asking if he wants to try using a bow and arrow, asking if he knows how to handle it. The protagonist asks if she wants him, the king, to use that, and she says he can give it back to her as soon as he's finished using it, but he becomes furious and says that a knight doesn't use a long-range weapon, like a coward, throwing the bow on the ground with all his might, and the girl immediately regrets having lent him the bow, asking what he's doing, and Dunn doesn't understand anything, thinking that at this rate, maybe the test will fail, but then he says, joining the others as they walk through the forest, he mentions knowing a good hunting spot and suggests they go there. The boy agrees, claiming he has more experience than them, and the old man is fine with that. Well, the boy then speaks with Don, telling him he spotted a village at the edge of the area and believes there might be several people there. However, he also points out that approaching the village with such a small group isn't a good idea, because it's nearly impossible to escape once they're surrounded. So, they decide to hunt the kobolds living in the caves. Their plan is to set fire to the nearby grass and leaves, using the smoke to flush out the caves, and in doing so, they will be able to kill the kobolds inside more easily. Everyone is surprised by his plan, thinking it's exactly what you'd expect from an experienced person, but he doesn't think it's a big deal, saying it's nothing too. The midst of all that chaos, Ariana spoke to him once more, addressing Leon Dragonia, speaking to her faithful knight, commanding that he be well received as a symbol of honor and faith. And so, the goddess descended upon them and chose him. Be proud of, since he studied all sorts of tutorials and stealth methods, dreaming of the day he'd enter a high-rank portal. But the only portal he's entered is this one, and he needs to get promoted this time. After all, he wonders how much longer he will remain stuck in D rank, but just then, one of them spots a kobold nearby, right in front of them, getting close enough to be killed, and everyone is terrified. Fear grips them as the monsters attack. So, Su tells Tyron to block with his shield, and he agrees, but when the monsters charge, they realize that things are easier than they initially thought. The boy notices that they are very stupid and die easily, saying that it will be easy to block them if they only come in a straight line. But then, his sister tells him to get out of the way, because there's a monster flying right at his head. She even tries to hit it, but the monster falls on top of him, taking him down. Su is very surprised, because the boy is almost killed, and he has to go and save him. He tells them not to lower their guard, because even though they may be weak, they are very fast, and the boy is scared to death. And so, she starts throwing flashes and daggers everywhere. The little old man also does his part, using his gauntlet to punch the monsters. And Daomon thinks it's great, only today. There are a few more left, and then they can move on. After all that, they're told they did a good job. And so, the boy apologizes to Daon because he made a mistake. But Daon says it's okay. It's his first time after all. And says that Daon also killed too, and no one got hurt thanks to Grandpa. He says everyone did very well. And he starts to think he can do this, that he was just nervous at first. But this group isn't so bad, except for one person, the protagonist, who is just analyzing, and then one of them confronts him, asking why he didn't do anything while they were fighting, and the girl agrees, and they tell the examiner that he just stood back and watched, asking if it's even okay for him to stay doing that, and the examiner says he'll take it into consideration when evaluating them, so they shouldn't worry, and Daon says that, if that's the case, it's fine, while the girl is visibly angry. Then he tells everyone that, as king, and he willingly accepted this, saying that it was a position of honor and hardship, but that he could not disappoint the citizens of the kingdom and the knights who followed him. He transplanted the sacred treasure, the heart. They should go a little deeper, because they'll soon arrive at the cave, and as they walk, they finally manage to find it. And it really is a cave, deep in the back. Don says they'll shoot fire just like he said before. So, they gather some straw to set fire right at the cave entrance, all to force the smoke inside, and then Su approaches to light it, but the protagonist asks if he really thinks that's the best he can do. And then Su asks what he means by that, since he's the only one not helping at all. However, the protagonist questions if that's the best he can do, telling him not to repeat the question. Daomon, however, says that he's used this method 3 times and succeeded every time. And the protagonist acknowledges that this trial is based on experience and that it's not bad, but he still asks how he can rely on experience when he has so little. But Daemon doesn't like what he's saying at all, since he's younger than him. He has experience in spades, really setting those bushes on fire, and he asks everyone to gather around, because the kobolds that are inside there are going to come out soon, and everyone agrees, getting ready to fight them, and the boy realizes that they are running out from inside, fleeing from the smoke, heading straight towards everyone. And the girl, he thinks this is the moment, launching his arrows and stones to try and kill them, and they gather the kobolds as they emerge, managing to kill them with ease. And Daum likes how things are unfolding, because he knew it would work, and his method was correct, and he says that's great, because they're going to get rid of all of them this way. As they continue killing, he thinks that if they manage to get a lot of kobolds there and kill some goblins on the plains, they will be successful. At that moment, he hears a different noise and begins to tremble with fear, realizing that the sound is from a gnoll captain, and that huge monster appears close to him, and he becomes scared because the gnoll captain is the boss of the portal at Seiyu's station and is above rank C, and the monster goes after them, who attracted too much attention, and appears next to Daum, who is scared to death, questioning why he had to appear right now. Then, of the lion of the goddess, into his chest, and promised to protect the Holy Grail. And that was how he became the Grand Duke Dragonia and also the king of the Leon Heart Kingdom. And so, at 80 years old, he recounts that many things happened during that time. Face to face with that thing, Daum is terrified, and the girl starts calling him, and he says that he is going and they are going to fight the gnoll captain, and says that Nyan and Grandpa must take care of the kobolds in the cave. He says that he needs someone experienced on each team, because an experienced rank going above a guild captain is suicide. He may be a rookie, but he needs to believe that Shinta and Ron will hold out, and the two of them put that huge thing together, each on one side. But the boy is paralyzed with fear when he sees that creature, and the monster screams at him, sensing his fear, and going after the boy, who can't even move. Then Da Sung shouts, telling him to pull himself together, thinking it's impossible because he's too intimidated, and the monster prepares to cleave the boy in two with his axe. And Da Sung thinks that if he's in this state, he won't be able to defend himself like before, and the boy can't even manage to parry that axe blow, losing his shield due to the attack, but not suffering too much damage. And so, Deyoung screams at him, calling out to Taon, thinking this is crap, and the kid is on the floor scared to death and about to be dead, and the appraiser is just standing there. And Daeum asks why the association employee isn't doing anything, because he said he would help if things got dangerous, and at this rate, Taon is really going to die. So Naesun, he prepares to go up and save the boy, running, grabbing the shield, and getting ready to defend against the monster's attack, stopping the blade, and protecting the boy with his life. Then, he stands up, exploding with mana, and, dodging that attack, the monster finds it strange, and prepares to attack once more. So, Daong stands in front, awaiting the attack, questioning if he'll be able to defend himself. But, as the attack comes, he thinks to himself that if Taon can pull himself together, they might even be able to defeat this thing, but at the rate things are going, they are all going to die. And so, the protagonist thinks that it really wasn't bad at all, going up to them and stopping the blade of that thing with just 2 fingers, telling it to try again. And Daong doesn't understand anything, wondering what the protagonist said, since he just stopped the gnoll's attack with a finger. And so, the protagonist tells him to raise, for there were 3 great wars with the orcs, and also a strange, hunchbacked goblin evolved into an archdemon, and the Empire created even more complicated situations. And in the middle of one of those wars, a knight speaks with the protagonist, his shield, and faced the gnoll again, since he already did it once, asking him why he can't do it twice, telling him to get up quickly and raise his shield. And then, Som asks what he's talking about, and the Prota orders him to block his attack and quickly retaliate. Both the monster and the soldier are confused and just stand there, paying attention. Then, the soldier thinks everything is fine, but wonders if he doesn't understand the situation he's in. They are all in danger. However, the Prota gets angry again at that impertinent commoner, swearing that he will defy him upon witnessing the glory of King Leonhar's guidance. He then says that, for a Templar knight like himself, guiding a commoner soldier is an honor that should be passed on to his future generations, adding that the soldier didn't even thank him for his benevolence, ordering him to raise his shield, block, and counterattack. And then he doesn't know what to do, asking what he did wrong, full of fear, but knowing he needs to do something to survive. And so the monster prepares to attack again, but in reality, it tries to attack Leon, who simply summons his cover, power, questioning if that crazy dog wants to die just by looking at him. And the dog quickly understands who is in charge, crying and acting like a puppy, trembling with fear. And Leon doesn't understand this, moving. On top of the monster that is attacking him, he defends himself with his shield and thinks that the creature is strong. It almost knocked his shield away, but the protagonist calls him an idiot again, pointing out that he is using a shield, so how can he expect to fight, using only brute force? He tells him not to face an enemy stronger than he can handle, instructing him to dodge attacks, look for an opening, and questions how he expects to succeed in battles by only defending. Then he says that his opponent isn't a scarecrow, but a living creature that can learn, telling him to use his head and think. Then Dion asks what he should do, but the monster manages to hit him, and the protagonist does as well. Hits him in the leg, saving his life, and tells him not to take his eyes off his opponent. He then thinks that he would have died if he had blocked the attack head-on, having only lost a little bit of hair, while the protagonist orders him. He says that the Empire's school of black magic is imposing experiments once again, and that he can't take it anymore. He says that all this is because the Empire accepted that damned northern occultist and asks how they dare to stay focused and not waste his potential, telling him to use his ability because he can do better. He is surprised by Leon, saying that he has potential, and questions how, even though he is a D rank with no talent, and even though he doesn't have a unique skill, he believes he can improve, but he thinks it's impossible facing that thing head-on, saying he has no chance, and that he'd suddenly have potential just because he thinks so, but he still believes. This time he's determined to succeed, and as a monster attacks, he starts to believe he can do it, summoning even more power and meeting the monster's axe head-on, destroying part of his shield, but managing to defend against the attack. Dodging, he notices that he actually managed to block the attack, feeling happy and thinking he succeeded, but the monster is a little more intelligent than him, delivering a huge punch to the face and throwing him to the ground, and the protagonist starts to disappoint himself, wondering why he can't see the bigger picture. Then, he says he still has a long way to go, but even fallen and passed out on the floor. The boy is smiling, and so, the result of Gunda and Sue's evaluation, this year is still D rank. So, after a while, someone asked the protagonist if he knew, and the protagonist says that he knew from the beginning, because there's no way a warrior built like him could be a mercenary. And that gentleman who was hiding behind a mask, he mentions that he used to use this mask to disguise both his face and his body, but now he thinks it was pointless. And that man is the president of the Korean Association, Kang Ryok. Then, he says that this time he participated in the evaluation, asking if the protagonist got what he wanted, but the protagonist replies that he absolutely didn't, because, at the very least, he only has one soldier candidate, and besides, he doesn't need to be so anxious, because he does not intend to go to another continent. The president is surprised that he knows this, realizing that the protagonist actually knows what he was thinking, and admits he was a little nervous, because the power that His Majesty displayed was very incredible, and earlier, he was also very impressed. It may have been a D-rank monster dungeon, but that boss was still at least a C-rank boss. Irritated by the monster staring at him, the protagonist says that, because I'm going to have to choose a very large work, and depending on you, I think I'm going to have to do a work with who knows how many chapters. But then, the challenge is launched. Just click subscribe to receive this. Try to turn away from God, cursing those separatist fools more and more. So he orders the knights to gather, saying that this is what happens when you give human rights to people who don't even deserve to be slaves. It hasn't even managed to become a human, and it's staring at him like that, wondering how long it intends to keep staring with that ugly face, before killing it with just a finger. And with that, the president comments that he dealt with. It's like it was just a toy, and the protagonist remarks that something like that isn't even worthy of being a toy. Then, the president says that if he wants to start a guild, he's certain they can assist him, because he's right about it. The protagonist is already aware that when you want to establish an organization of people, nothing is better than fame, and there aren't many ways to become famous in this day and age. And it's mentioned that there was a portal that became red in Shongi because of a failed raid, and for a year, no one has been able to clear it, and that's causing problems, whether it's to destroy it or to obtain the Jewel of Wisdom, which is guarded by the portal boss, Red Jag Spinner. And this is the portal at the Shongi Sports Complex. On the radio of the KPP Guild's first team, they enter that red gate, and one of them speaks with Ryong, talking about the location, and he says he's aware of it, because they had a modern civilization in that world, and perhaps one even more developed than Earth's. And they think this is cool, because it's a portal to a world of the future. However, that leader mentions that there are fantasy worlds and dark-haired women, so why wouldn't it have something futuristic? One of them even comments that it's more like cyberpunk. He starts laughing, but the leader considers it a problem because they need to revise their plans, starting with the group's organization. And the boy agrees with him, since they planned everything with the expectation of fighting strong opponents. But then the leader states that they will use that building over there as their base, since it's quite tall and offers a good vantage point of the entire area. They enter the building, and inside, the leader asks Royu if he can detect anything. The boy replies that he can't see anything, neither monsters nor NPCs, but then he inquires about the Jad spinner, who should be the boss, and Royu says he doesn't see him either. The leader finds this strange, commenting on how odd it is that such a large city has no people or monsters, but in a way, he thinks this is a should have conquered them all. And so, at the age of 96, the Empire's bastards finally achieved what they desired. One of the leaders of that cult claims they made 3 million living sacrifices, pleading for their wish to be granted. And then the protagonist speaks, good thing, meaning they won't face any resistance army or some evil authoritarian army. Then he addresses the members of the KPP guild, asking for their attention, and explains that they have entered the portal, but are still without access. Information about the Jade Spinner. They need to keep a close watch on their surroundings. They will be selecting a team for the expedition to map it out. But, as he's speaking, he ends up being destroyed by a laser, with the upper part of his body completely torn off in front of the other members of the group, dying instantly. They are shocked by the sheer amount of blood gushing out. They call for Hansor, but he is already dead, and everyone is scared to death because they are being attacked out of nowhere. So, they have to protect themselves, but those weapons turn against them, trying to kill all the guild members, and they start running away, trying to save their lives. But many are dying along the way, and he shouts, but he's the only one left, and he becomes desperate, because even Hansor Wrong, who was a ranked tank, couldn't react in time. He wonders what the hell this monster is, and then he talks to Laura, saying that at this rate, they are all going to die, asking if they have found the enemy's location yet, and she says it's at 3 o'clock, but they can't measure the distance because of the dust. And so she talks to the guild's vice leader, saying that the building won't endure a lot, and he says that's right, asking them to retreat in order, telling them to get out quickly because the building is going to collapse. And Blonde talks to Vider, asking about the guild master's body, but he says there's something strange, saying that they will come back to retrieve it as soon as they recover, and tells Rary to go ahead and check the exit. The girl then starts off ahead of them all and talks to Vare, saying that she doesn't sense anyone's presence there and thinks the exit is safe. But as soon as she leaves, she notices something, and when she puts her hand on her neck, she feels her neck being cut, but it's too late, and the girl is all chopped up. Man, this scene of her running and losing her neck to the evil one, or something like that, is very reminiscent of Ghost Ship, when everyone is dancing on the ship and they lose their heads to a piano wire. But the amount of fear I had of this, things, that the Emperor had crossed the line, and the poor guy, who always said he didn't want to die, simply committed suicide along with 3 million citizens in the capital, transforming into a massive monster and summoning the Lord of Chaos. That will never happen in my life. Like me being on a yacht or being on a cruise and ending up becoming a ghost inside the ship. Probably won't happen, but it haunted me for a long time. Convese, the leader, arriving by. Seeing what happened to her, Ali despairs that Rary has been turned into minced meat for Stroganoff because of those wires, and he notices wires all over the building. He wonders how long they've been there. So, he tells everyone to cut the wires so they can escape, urging them to infuse mana into their weapons to cut through them, since the wires aren't normal. And he starts to wonder who is doing this, questioning if it's just one enemy, and how long they've been watching them. And indeed, the enemy is watching everything they do from a distance. It's that multi-eyed monster clinging to one of the buildings. Then, he decides to attack again, directing his mana line toward the vice leader, but before he can do anything, they manage to get away. The vice leader is desperate, seeing that almost the entire world is dead, and he's missing an arm. So, he demands that whoever is responsible reveal themselves, cursing the thing, and the robot actually approaches him. He's completely baffled that a robot is behind all of this, asking if it's the one who, Jagedd. So he questions what the boy thinks, wondering if, should he possess that power, he would be able to fight even without ammunition. And then he curses that thing again, saying that it killed his comrades, but at that moment a monster attacks him with that line of mana, confirming that it indeed killed them, also tearing him apart. And so, the mission of that thing was to protect that city. Consequently, the first, second, and third teams were killed, and the portal difficulty is elevated, and this leads to the raid being paused for an indefinite period. Just then, another group of people, seemingly eager to die inside, approaches the portal, commenting that the atmosphere there is as bad as what he witnessed in the video, and the girl explains that they won't enter the city because there's a high probability that the Jad spinner will appear the deeper they venture into the portal. And the leader of that group, who resembles a vampire, says, in the capital, Eventually, he gathered the knights and took up the sacred sword, which still hadn't been cleaned of last year's orc grease. Then, he declares that he's going to the Empire together with all of them. And so, at 121 years old, he says that, as agreed upon, they will keep the Jewel of Wisdom. And regarding the remaining rewards, the 60 billion will be their guild's share. So they come to an understanding there. Meanwhile, the Shanggu Sports Complex portal is occupied by a Keet. Of the top 10 guilds in Korea, Golden.W, along with its vice leader and leader, are at the forefront, accompanied by the Tower of Magic, whose leader is nearly S rank, and the 48 mercenaries. Manhwa is also present, serving the king at that moment, there's him, who is obviously unranked, and just another individual in the crowd. A little further into the city, the fourth team sets up camp nearby. And with that, ask Harry what happened. She says she's just worried about things going well, but also about the possibility of them going wrong. So, she says that, to be honest, she thinks the best possible scenario is for things to work out without His Majesty needing to get involved. But, in that case, His Majesty wouldn't have the chance to become famous. He agrees and says that this is the best possible outcome, and she is surprised by his agreement. He says that if the King of Leonhar doesn't need to personally intervene, then it means the situation wasn't dire, and he asks her what she believes is the duty of a monarch in their kingdom, and she thinks it is to govern, and he says, that's obvious, but anyone can do that. That is, unless the person is arrogant. He assumes most rulers would be the same, so she thinks that as the King of Knights, he must possess something more, until she notices something, thinking that now that he's stopped to think, he only intervened when an attack was unblockable. Then, she notes that King Leonhar's duty is to be the last line of defense, asking if she understands, stating that the fact that King Leonhar needs to intervene is a shame for the knights, as it only highlights how dire the situation is. And he says that, coincidentally, it seems he will have to do it again, in place of miserable weaklings like them, who are missing their honorable knights. And the girl doesn't quite understand, but says that Hyde's team has the S-rankers, Ruang, Gusho, and the mage, and she thinks everything will be alright. However, the protagonist confirms with her if she said they were called hunters, admitting that he did his best, but the world was being destroyed, the opposite of what he desired. He attempted to destroy evil with all the holiness that existed on this continent, but he was unable to stop them, and so, another night goes, that they are much stronger than ordinary people, but still, they don't understand war. Meanwhile, they are wondering if the surroundings of the city are safe, but that monster is already watching them all from above, and they start to argue, pointing out that the others seem quite confident about the information, despite only encountering the enemy 3 times. They mention that the group calls themselves a strike team, but they analyze the monster's patterns and respond accordingly. The protagonist questions this, and she begins to understand what he means. Leon explains that the general knows how to respond according to each unique situation, so there is no set pattern. He adds that, from what he's heard, this Jagedd.This is simply unpredictable. Suddenly, he appears out of nowhere, attacking everyone, while the protagonist recognizes him as a talented warlord. In Jagedd.'s memory, we see the last message from his creator, who is speaking to him, saying that it was her end, and that she has one last favor to ask of him. Her final command is to eliminate all unidentified beings who invade the city. He's been doing this ever since, shooting at everyone present. They notice that Jagedd.This has arrived, and they tell each other to take cover quickly. However, the monster identifies each of the teams and attacks them as needed to eliminate them. These attacks are far too strong, and they need to hide in order to not ending up getting killed. Then they realize how absurd this is, wondering what kind of monster it could be, and the monster system receives a response. Unidentified living being, with 23% of data lost, and he decides to open fire on the target, charging energy to 48%. But just then, one of the hunters arrives with his axe to try and kill the creature, striking with all his might, but the attack doesn't cause significant damage. Blunt force. And the monster states that the main joint region has been damaged and internal pressure is increasing, so it changes its priority to eliminating the unidentified being, and it says that it's too late, speaking to that can of sardines, and tells Gion to appear. And she retorts that she already told him not to call her Gion, attacking with her lightning energy, ready to go after the creature, hitting the monster and taking it down. And the guy with the up to Lon, speaking with him, and then speaks to Aaron, telling him that he can be proud, as his father died with honor and joined the banquet of the gods. And so, Ayan agrees with him, but the protagonist speaks to the goddess mentally, saying that, Hammer says she did a good job putting that monster in its place. And then, an ultra-powerful electrical discharge strikes the creature, and the mage says it continues from there, and the monster recognizes an overload of activity, and emergency repairs commence. The radar system is deactivated, permission to use restricted resources is granted, and RWR equipment is activated within the city limits. Target redesignation is authorized, and the risk level escalates to 3. The wizard is the highest priority target for elimination. Then, the monster leaps away in an attempt to escape, and they notice it fleeing. They try to pursue it, but it lures them while eliminating the others. Then, the wizard announces that he will activate a distortion force field and instructs them to gather around him. He then stomps on the ground, creating the force field, which begins to deflect the bullets. Then, they communicate with Gilta Yoson, explaining that the trajectory of the bullets is being curved, and he explains that it is a magical tool designed to combat Jad Spinia, lamenting that he has to use it so soon, but he still needs it. J Spinner recognizes it, observing the unusual phenomenon, and initiates the maintenance operation. His analysis is completed, identifying the points as D15, S37, and F11. He opens fire. Then, the bullet penetrates the shield, striking the man beside the wizard, who is caught completely off guard. Thinking this is impossible, as he had already calculated the angle at which the bullets would deflect, he questions what the hell that thing is, because it's completely absurd. The bullets penetrate that shield, and no one is safe near it anymore. One of the hunters speaks to the wizard, asking him to deactivate the distortion force field because it's too difficult to predict the bullet's trajectory. Then, he says he's going to deactivate it, telling them to run as soon as the barrier drops. And he counts down in order to bring it down. But then, they notice what it is. One of them shouts for everyone to stay still, and everyone is paralyzed as those wires take over the area, and they realize it just in time. Noticing that he wasn't just running away, they wonder when he managed to set all of this up. The monster creates that web to make them kill each other, raising its weapon and also destroying all those. His limbs are trembling with fear, and he speaks to the knights, asking all the troops to look forward, and asks if they hear the sound of the villains all around the land. He talks about his children who cry, swallowing their wires. So, the wizard thinks this is going to go terribly wrong, wondering how this happened, because they gathered there because of the force field, but that was a mistake, and they won't be able to avoid that shock. Then, the charge is complete, and the fire opens, but something happens, and he notices someone approaching as they hear the sound of a horse. And that horse certainly isn't pure, because it's biting and cutting the wires with its teeth, and Prota says to him that it's been a while, as his old sworn friend has appeared again. Then, he pompously gets on the horse, and the hunters stop to watch, along with Jad Spinner and Prota. He stops in front of them all, speaking to the warriors and asking them to listen carefully, saying that the courage to face a sea of enemies alone with just one horse is what the king of Lonheart praises. So, the monster doesn't understand. Very well. And Lon says that he grants the glory of being received in his presence and the honor of a duel, saying that he gives royal authorization, brazenly calling that robot a warrior and asking for a duel. And everyone is shocked, questioning if he's really doing this and if he's crazy. And everyone, seeing the madness he's spouting, is speechless. Then, the monster activates the magnetic cannon, and its capacity goes to 13%, and it recognizes the protagonist, dealing with a level 0 threat like it's a simple species, thinks eliminating that identified Chiron will be easy, and everyone prepares to run while the monster is attacking. But the protagonist rushes forward, pulling out his spear and speaking with his old sworn friend. The horse enters the battle, running headlong towards the monster, who opens fire on the protagonist. But he declares that a knight is not affected by cowardly long-range weapons, charging with everything he has towards that thing. The monster's attack meets the tip of the protagonist's spear, but he manages to pass through it very calmly, attacking head-on, bypassing the attack and reaching the monster, destroying part of its body. And so it is said that, during that moment, Spinner's Jaeger's high-performance calculations stopped working, as she was unable to logically understand the phenomenon that was happening before her own tears. And he says that those demons are the ones who stole their brothers. All the while, he thinks to himself that the young men are gathering the almost dead flames of resistance in their hands, and the knights are trying to plant seeds of, and the protagonist thinks that it is very resistant because he only broke one part with his attack, and it is said that the machine assessed the situation and determined the weapon was just an old-fashioned spear, and it was fast, but there was a limit to the impact it could deliver, could cause, depending on its mass, and the threat level for him dropped to 0. It was a threat not even worth facing, and it would be killed by the cannon immediately. And that was the machine's assessment. So, 3 seconds. Rather, the specimen's scream created a thin barrier, a pattern different from the abnormal phenomena already recorded, and a prioritized target. And 2 seconds before, there was a direct collision between the cannonball and the enemy, and the resulting impact should eliminate the opponent, even if he blocked the attack. And a second before, that bullet went flying, and the protagonist continued heading in that direction, as the bullet was deflected, and there was no direct impact or blockage of the projectile. He just parried an ability that is as easy for the Knights Templar as breathing, a miracle possessed by humanity's strongest warriors, a way to enforce the rules of the world. And so, the divine law, blessing of the dark, and of the arrow, heads towards the monster, and the protagonist manages to hit it. And so, he says that this will redirect any long-range attack, no matter what. And so, he keeps fighting that thing, and Jagedd. Spinner turns away from him, and he realizes he's unable to analyze or comprehend the almost completely destroyed phenomenon. He states that the enemy's threat level was forcibly increased, because the threat level, his is now 5. And so, Jagedd Spinner decides to abandon the battlefield, releasing smoke. Prota finds this strange, since the monster simply fled. And the monster begins to remember his creator talking to Eop, saying that he needs to protect this place and shouldn't let anyone get close. He had been living based on that. But at this moment, he's falling apart. It's stated that the heavy weapon is available for use, and he gets rid of 5 normal projectiles, 36 special projectiles, and temporarily eliminates waste. And the secondary weapon, a 60mm heavy machine gun, needs to be prepared. He goes after this maintenance and replenishes the cutting wires. Hope in a worthless land steeped in blood. He asks if they hear the sound of the villains who have taken their loved ones. He speaks to his goddess, owner of the sacred sword, the sacred spear, and also the Holy Grail. He asks, "Sharp," and the support joint check is done. It's damaged, and the monster is rebuilding itself in its hiding place. And the new weapon model's level 5 threat modulation for the enemies begins. So he starts doing his upgrades, remembering his master, talking to him, and thanking him for protecting the city. With that, he continues to arm himself so that he can face the protagonist once again. And so, at the portal of the Zongu Sports Complex, in the heart of the city, in Block B, once again those hunters are together, but they are filled with fear. One of them asks everyone else to wait, because 250 meters ahead, crossing the street on the corner of the building, a part of the machine gun is visible, and it is J. Espinha himself. He tells the long-distance dealers to cross carefully to the building next to J. Espinha, and the rest wait there, because if he notices them, they will need a distraction. But then, blood splatters on him as he looks back. All his friends are dead, torn to pieces. He finds this very strange, questioning, what the hell is this? But J. Espinha is already behind him, ready to kill him. But when he returns the attack, J. Espinha disappears, running away, and that guy starts cursing that damn spider, because he swears it was right there. He doesn't even notice, however, that he's already all cut up, chopped up by J. Espinha, who, it gets increasingly brutal, quickly eliminating 5 unidentified beings, but he hears another hunter running and crying out that he doesn't want to die. Then, its threat level drops to 0, and the monster barely prepares to do anything, but as the hunter runs, he ends up falling in a cemetery in front of the tombstones, begging J. Spinner to spare him because he doesn't want to die. But the monster continues to advance. Even so, it gets close enough to remember its master in those tombs, and she was talking to the robot, saying that soon she would be buried there like everyone else and become a part of that city forever. So, she asks if he will protect the city too, and so he starts hacking his own thoughts and commands, forcibly changing his programming, leaving that coward alive, who is his soldiers if they hear the sound of the villains who are trying to violate everything, asking them all to rage for eternity, asking them to be furious with those fools who are around those tombstones, simply turning around and leaving. But then, as he walks away, the boy doesn't understand anything, and one of them asks if he's okay, offering him water. He notices it's Gilter and Song, who just say they think he's tired, but he asks, "What do you mean?" And the other explains that he ran, instead of killing him. He says the enemy must have seen them and ran away because he knew he wouldn't win, but he believes the enemy also has a limit, acknowledging that. That place looks like a cemetery, and he wonders if it isn't too clean compared to the other parts of the city, and they agree, saying they hadn't noticed it before, but that's the only place that's clean, and the monster begins to flee through the middle of the city, avoiding a fight in the cemetery. He calculates the enemy force expansions, determining that their chance of victory is 92%, and his final decision is to retreat. And they think this place is unpleasant, and the robot makes a final decision. The highest priority is to protect the citizens, even if they are dead. And so, he returns to his center once again, re-establishing himself, and the estimated number of remaining enemies is 49, and threat level 5 is in good condition. He's going to restart the battle, but someone arrives, noticing the monster and asking if he had fun with the Playboys. It's the protagonist who appears next to the monster, for sure. Someone's going to have to restart his Windows because it crashed with a blue screen. It is said that Leon values honor, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say he's the embodiment of nobility, and he hated cowardly ambushes more than anything. He was always looking for a fair fight, and so he asks the monster if it's ready, but the robot blows everything up around them. Of course, it doesn't mean the opponent would also play fair, but that wasn't a reason for him to abandon his values as a knight, because the incarnation of nobility lets nothing break his momentum, and that's what makes him strong, and that's what made him the chosen one. And the protagonist begins to think that he shouldn't expect honor from a machine. Then the robot starts checking its equipment, a heavy machine gun with 480 projectiles remaining and 4 cutting wires. Then it opens fire on the protagonist, but he manages to defend himself with the divine law, the blessing of the shield of. Huge video to start the year. Very good. And don't forget, this manhwa today is absurd, and, if you want a continuation of it, leave it here in the comments and subscribe so I know that you're enjoying it. And don't forget to, deceived by victory. And so he says that his first knight will not be able to stop the evil that has spread far beyond the horizon, so he tells the knights to remember that, as long as they have honor, they will not lose. Arrow. And so the monster notices that there is something abnormal, so it analyzes the curvature emanating from that point, using several points and wires around it, and launches fire at the protagonist again, who once again just looks, smiling, at those bullets. Then it plays. He stomps the ground with his feet, raising the earth all around him and forming a shield made purely from the soil. The monster, seeing this, is visibly confused. Consequently, its spear hurtles towards Jagedd, nearly crushing him. In front, the monster is terrified, but upon realizing what's happening, he sees the protagonist once again preparing to unleash the spear, appearing with his horse from within the smoke to eliminate the robot, who begins to flee backward, scared out of his wits. As he flees, Tentair strikes him with his horse, and the robot finds this utterly incomprehensible, as Leon ceases his advance. Then, he speaks to the stallion, asking his enemy if he wants to play hide-and-seek with them. The robot continues to find this unpredictable, running wildly and fleeing from the protagonist, but he charges in a straight line, smashing through everything and advancing towards the robot, relentlessly pursuing him. The robot can't help but think this is unpredictable, as he doesn't stop at all, questioning how a specimen can possess such speed, until he notices something he can exploit, reaching that point, grabbing that bar, and returning directly to the protagonist, initiating the attack. And so the protagonist shouts to his stallion, charging towards the robot, and the horse goes all out, managing to hit and tear off one of the robot's legs. As they cross paths, the protagonist thinks it wasn't bad at all, because he managed to resist, and the robot still doesn't understand what's happening. Then, it pulls out its machine gun as the protagonist rushes forward, and the robot jumps, shooting at him non-stop. But the bullets start running out, while the protagonist manages to dodge each one of those projectiles, and the robot continues jumping from building to building, like Spider-Man, launching shots at Leon. Then, he shouts to his horse, who begins jumping across the rocks, chasing after the robot in the air, and the robot almost understands, because the protagonist has reached a higher point than him, and from above, the robot begins to analyze, noticing that it has 68 projectiles remaining. So, it thinks it should shoot everything while it's in the air, but as it fires, the protagonist descends, and the protagonist speaks to the goddess once again, calling out to her as he summons his sword, wondering what that foolish knight should do. And with that, he heads off to war for his goddess, and the goddess speaks to her knight, her beloved, on top of the robot, resisting each of those shots. And once again, the robot doesn't understand, but then he shouts, "Glory, Leonhardt," tearing the robot in half with a single attack from the sky to the ground, leaving it completely in pieces. And, thus, the robot recognizes that it has suffered lethal damage and exceeded its operational limit, and he begins to remember, once again, his master saying that what is sealed within must never be released from his core, so that the core begins to glow, initiating self-destruction, and that supernova shines in the middle of the city. It is said that he will detonate all the explosives in the landfill facilities. Then, Prota is surprised by that glow, seeing it from the ground, and a nuclear explosion occurs right beneath him. Then, it is said that when JS-10-253 opened his eyes, he was inside a storage container that smelled of oil. Then, the man calls Jagedd.This, telling him to protect the city and fulfill his duty. But then something happens, and a monster kills that man, and then places his eye inside the container for Jagedd.This, who starts killing that thing. And so, he thinks there is only one goal, which is to help his allies and defeat all those monsters, protecting them. And that was his mission, the protection of the city. And the Jagedd.This went to the city immediately and defeated the enemies. They became the guardians of the city, becoming heroes. The story of robot defenders who saved the city from despair offered a sweet prospect to citizens who were losing faith. And the Jagedd.This became a symbol of hope, the Knights of Steel. They continued to fight against evil. And it is said that the Jagedd.This, including number 10253, were remodeled and began protecting the city under the orders of a commander. They protected, guarded, and continued fighting, until there was nothing left to defend. And so his master speaks to Eop, saying it is his last request, ordering him to continue protecting the city, as that thing must never escape. And the only remaining battle machine received his last order, that no one should approach that thing. And he prepared, protected, guarded, and shielded again and again without stopping, preparing and protecting repeatedly for many, many years. And even in the end, he died. Honorable knight. And so, she tells him that his goddess will be with him until the end. And so he goes into the war for Leonhardt, ordering all troops to attack. He says that winter, they face the final battle, trying to protect it. And the protagonist thinks it's good that he fell, but the arrow shield blessing worked, and that must be what he was trying to protect, that black orb over there. And the protagonist says that it is the jewel of wisdom, and that is not something that should exist. And then, Jagedd.This tries again to do something, seeing that Prota is going after it. He is surprised, noticing that he is still trying to fight, wondering how long he has been protecting this place. And Jagedd.This tries, with his last strength, to fulfill his mission, and Prota questions how long he has fought alone, recognizing that he is a devoted and loyal knight, and all living beings across the dimensions are in debt to him thanks to his services. And he speaks to Sir Jagedd.This, solemnly declaring that his mission is complete, invoking his sacred power, stirring everything up, and creating a torrent of Elis on the spot. And so he frees both the monster and the city from that jewel of wisdom, saying he hopes he rests in peace, giving the robot the rest he deserves. And so he once again remembers his master, thanking her. Okay, I certainly didn't expect the story of a robot to be so sad. It definitely caught me off guard. And so Prota returns to the association, and their leader says he understands that he destroyed the jewel, but Prota asks if he is. He complains, but the other man laughs, saying no. He explains that, since he was the one who destroyed the Jagedd.This, he has the right to do whatever he wants with the jewel, but the protagonist shouldn't be disappointed, as it was actually poison. He questions this statement. The protagonist explains that the jewel was created by the demon of wisdom to tempt humans. In other words, it's a demonic item. The leader is surprised to hear this, and the protagonist continues, saying that, at first, it grants your wishes, but then it starts to ask for something in return, as if you were feeding a beast in order to tame it. It corrodes humans with promises of eternal life, and it doesn't take long for the individual to lose their humanity and become a demon. He asks if any others have been found in other locations, adding that it's best if they are destroyed as soon as possible. The leader is shocked by this revelation, and says that he will communicate this information to the American government as quickly as possible, against billions of demons that filled the earth, and it was an absurdly large war, involving both poles. And he says that barbarian slaves were used as undignified meat shields, while civilian knights armed with, as quickly as possible. The protagonist agrees that he really should, but warns that they may have already succumbed to the demon's temptation. As soon as they enter the room, he asks if that is where he is resting. The leader confirms that yes, he is safe and sound. Then he saw the remains of Jagedd.This, and the association leader asked what he intended to do. The protagonist replied that, as an honorable gentleman, he would bury him and pray for his safe passage to the banquet hall of the gods. But he needed to be blessed first. The leader was then surprised when he pulled out the Holy Grail and began invoking sacred power with it, asking the robot to rest in peace, referring to him as a knight and bestowing a blessing. Then the robot arrives and begins to move. Everyone is surprised because Jagedd.This is moving, and the protagonist asks if he is still alive. The robot starts to respond, and he notices that this energy is divine power, realizing that it's not the source of energy, but believes that the divine blessing performed a miracle. So, Jagedd Spinner repairs himself bit by bit, and a small part of himself emerges. He then begins to respond to the protagonist, saying that if it is him, the goddess will choose him, and the robot doesn't understand anything. And so, the protagonist plants his sword in the ground, invoking even more sacred power, and no one there understands, wondering what this could be. The robot just keeps looking at him as he opens his eyes, wielding the sword, and makes a cut appears across the entire area, and from that opening, God manifests. Everyone is shocked, wondering how he could summon someone like that, and they all fall to their knees. It's said that all the humans present felt that the woman bathed in light was not human, but a divine being beyond comparison. Then he speaks to his beloved goddess Ariana, and she speaks to Leon Hard, her first knight. Inquiring how she can assist him, he replies that Sir Jagedd Spinner is an honorable knight and a role model for everyone. He is someone deserving of her attention. She pauses, glancing at the robot, but observes that he failed to accomplish his mission, prove his honor, or offer his glory to her. However, Leon asserts that, as her first knight, he vouches that, were it not for his current state, he would be worthy of Leon Hard's glory. He is a spears and shields died with honor, along with the glorious knights, and the chosen agent of all gods and holy temples, eliminated numerous demons on the battlefield. He says he defeated the demons alone, until the great night. Ariana responds that if he describes him in such a way, she will trust his judgment. Therefore, there's no reason to doubt him, but she needs to be certain of one thing. Addressing the Steel Knight from another world, asking if he will worship the light and proclaim justice as part of her army of knights. He responds somewhat doubtfully, and she says that he is full of recognition, but his heart is that of a child, and orders him to help her knight, to get rid of the evil in this world. And so, he too will become a knight. The robot turns to him, and he accepts. So they prepare to become a team, but no one there understands anything. Then he hacks the pattern of language, installing the language module, and thus speaks to the goddess in human language, saying that attacking the demons is a good plan. With that, she is happy talking to Jagedd Spinner, telling him that as long as he is loyal and helps the knight, she will be with him in glory, blessing the little robot. And it is said that this Knight Templar is now receiving the light of justice, and he becomes completely buffed, becoming a Knight Templar right away. Spinner 10253. Meanwhile, in another corner, in the United States Magic Tower, someone is apologizing in Master Reinhard Sherman's room, and this guy says that he was unable to carry out his command, and Reinhard then calls him idiot, saying that he can't even accomplish a simple task, and says that he taught him wisdom and truth. Still, he disappoints him, so he continues to beg for forgiveness, but says there was nothing he could do, because the survivor Lon was a variable that he did not anticipate, and that is the master of the American branch of the Magic Tower, Reinaldamas. The master in that crystal ball says he is filling his ears with useless excuses, talking about Leon. But then, he questions what he just said, and the old man doesn't understand anything, so he asks him to put it in the newspaper quickly, and the old man goes all out to put it in the newspaper, turning on the TV for him. So, the two look on, and the protagonist appears in the newspaper, saying that he is King Leon Hart, and poor Harry is there next to him looking completely out of it, and he says that he is Leon Dragonia, Leon Hart, and so that being in the crystal ball is surprised, wondering why this. And then, he tore countless demon lords and archdemons into pieces, and showed those bastards the power of the Holy Knight. And after the chaos of that war, the protagonist turns 217 years old, and winter has still not arrived. Bastard is there questioning non-stop, and the wizard can't believe that the master is scared, so he says he's giving up, saying he won't do this ever again, disappearing from that video conference, and the wizard asks what it happened to his master, who simply left without understanding anything, screaming and wanting him to come back. And so, since then, the jewel never spoke again, thinking, yeah, am I going to appear like that again in front of this crazy person? Never. These demons won't reveal themselves. And so, at the Korean Hunter Association, the leader asks if they will register Mr. Jagedd Spinner as a member of their guild, adding that it might be difficult to enforce that immediately. But Prota says it doesn't matter and leaves with Jagedd. Then, Jagedd notices that Prota is feeling a bit unwell and ends up spitting blood. Then, the goddess asks if he is okay, and he says yes, explaining that naming a Knight Templar in a land that lacks truth demanded a lot from him. So, he says it's not Jadd's fault, but his own, for not being strong enough. But she asks how it could be his fault, since everything is her fault for being weak. But then, he says that, no matter the situation, no one can blame a deity, asking her not to say such things. And she gets all emotional while Prota becomes more serious, and she says she's always grateful for his loyalty to her. But, even if it's due to the lack of divinity in this land, the fault of the other gods for not intervening sooner, he is surprised, and she tells him to rest well, asking him to have faith in their gods and to wait for them. And the protagonist understands this, asking about Ariana. And Ariana, in the world of the gods, speaks with the others, with her brothers and sisters, saying that they need to help her faithful followers. Then, they are surprised, and it is said that, the day the king of Leonheart turned 120 years old, was the day the world ended, leaving only one night remaining. He expelled all divinity from his world, and directed it into his own heart, and the gods, embarrassed enough, they evacuated to the heart of the holy man, and observed as the king of Leonheart subdued all evil monsters for 180 years, leaving a single person to carry the burden of the entire world. Therefore, all finished. He continued killing monsters, and the years went by, 231, 234, 256 years. He says that he destroyed the last remaining demon portal, and there was nowhere left for them to escape. The gods of the pantheon owed an unpayable debt to Leon. So, they ask how her baby is doing, and she says it's not good at all. Speaking to life, she says that her knight has strained himself too much, and she questions what they should do. And another god questions whether recommending a single Templar knight placed so much pressure on him, asking where the king of Leonheart, who shone with the glory of the gods and possessed the divinity of war, had gone. Pitos does what he can to maintain some dignity, stating that he fought for the gods for over 200 years and ultimately won. He admits he knows this, which is why he is angry with himself, and no one there knows what to say, and everyone is crestfallen. Ariana reflects on these past 180 years, declaring that the time has come to break their silence, as she can no longer bear to see her knight suffer. The dwarf says he has an idea, and she urges him to share it. So he says that just as life did on the plains, they should bestow whatever blessings they can to increase faith within society. That is the deity of the ace blacksmiths, Ito. Then Gara asks if he wants them to do missionary work, and Edo confirms, saying that they should display miracles to humans. And from what they have observed through the life of their faithful one, this world is connected through that thing called the internet. They will use this internet to her advantage. But then Gara asks why the king of Leonheart would bet on this idea, since he used to be a citizen of this world. And Etor says that he was in this world before the internet became popular. But at that moment, Ariana asks the steal, and regarding trial and error, he mentions that the news Leon delivered took 20 years to take root. However, he smiled, asking if this is where our new Templar Knight comes into action. And so they are surprised, saying to take a look at this. And Johnson doesn't understand anything, asking what it is. And the bald man says that it's on YouTube, questioning if this was even allowed. He questions what's going on, since a YouTuber from the Naju Plains is betting on something, noting that what they're seeing is Pantiao TV. And they start talking about the healing rice and ask why anyone would go to the hospital, because a single sentence from an office worker who used to despise farmers turned the life of a... With this, the protagonist is finally starting to turn the tables, and so he speaks to those poor servants of evil, telling them that now they are trapped there with him in this world, and that he is going to kill every single one of them. Farmer around, and it's just rice, but just one spoonful can change your life. And when they ask Mir about God, the results are shocking. They think it's full of clickbait, but Johnson says it has a lot of quality without no reason, and the three of them look on, wondering who did this. Then, the bald man talks about the Pantheon, asking if it wasn't Leon who was responsible. He asks if he seriously thinks this man would be on YouTube, and he replies that it's obviously not him, asking if he was the one who did it. But then he remembers when she said the computer was acting weird, and he recalls that she's terrible with computers. And Joao only comes to the conclusion that the biggest problem is that these videos are not clickbait, but are actually true, and they question what they're going to do and what this man is doing. He says he's going out. Then, the bald man asks where he's going, and he says he's going to talk to Leon himself. And so, meanwhile, in the penthouse where Lynn is, he is just enjoying life. Meanwhile, Jade, who is making those videos, has the subtitles completed and is editing right away, continuing with the upload process. And Hari goes to him, asking if he used her notebook, questioning what he did. And so, he says the name of the plan is Noise Marketing, Phase 1 is complete, and he moves on to Phase 2, Network Hacking in Progress, and she questions what that is. talking, and she concludes that he must be playing a game, getting all excited because Hanari doesn't know anything about computers anyway, and the guy is simply flooding the video of what the protagonist did. It begins in the plains of... In the temporary branch tab of the Pantiao Guild, Joao S. runs over there calling for Leon, saying that the video needs to be taken down, and neither of them understands anything about it. Then Harry serves him some barley tea, and he drinks it, getting lost in the conversation. But then he says that's not it, asking who uploaded that video, and the protagonist says that Spinner did it, and he is surprised that the killing machine made the video, asking how, because he is incredibly skilled. And the protagonist questions what he means by taking down the video. And Joao S. says that, as he already knows, the rice grains from the Naju plain are completely different from what they cultivate in this. They were scared to death by the protagonist's voice, and he says that he wasn't trapped. It was those bastards who were trapped there with him. He continued killing relentlessly, hating those things more and more each time, until, after a long time, they arrived. World, and just consuming them is enough to make someone healthy and cure illnesses. It's like a fairy tale. And as soon as people find out about this rice field, the entire world will come after them. The Naju Plains. They will be overrun with thieves, and these won't be ordinary thieves. He mentions that as soon as the Food Association permits planting, the members of the association will assist as much as possible, asking him to wait until then. He adds that even understands and says he is sure they have their own laws and systems in place. He understands this much, but it's an unnecessary worry. Then, Junes asks how that can be, and the protagonist replies that the goddess's plantation cannot be stolen by anyone. Junes doesn't quite understand and wonders how he can be so confident. Later that night, a group of thieves arrives with the mission of stealing and burning the seeds from the rice field. Then, one of them asks, "What the hell is this?" He thought security would be tight, but there's nothing here. All they have to do is grab the seeds, set the place on fire, and say they've already been paid. So, they proceed to do their job, ordering the gas tanks to be brought over so they can go in. And that is the Viper Squad. They enter the rice field in a line to steal, but they notice that someone is there, and they start to get scared, but it ends up that only the Scarecrow, and they pass by it, becoming a little calmer, but they find it strange, as they think it moved. So they pass by another one again, noticing that it is too scary, but then other Scarecrows appear there, and several more keep appearing. They get scared and wonder how they can call someone a demonic human if they are afraid of a Scarecrow. However, one of them says enough with the nonsense, telling them to feel the wind direction, as they need to burn the largest area possible in the shortest time. They go to get the seeds from the deposit and start pouring gasoline on the ground, asking if that's all there is. But then the leader says that, since they say this is a good thing, they are going to keep some for themselves, taking them out so they can keep them, telling them to go to the mansions and do this. But then he notices and asks where they went. Then they say they were behind him. At 300 years of killing in his life, he finishes off yet another demon. And some kids wonder if they are all right, looking at that dead monster right in front of them, and they question what happened and remain entire time. But Doshan also disappears, and they notice something. Realizing that those Scarecrows are getting closer and closer and surrounding them, until the Scarecrow appears behind him, moving, and when he looks back, he realizes that the Scarecrow has a drawn-on face and looks surprised. Then it attacks the thing, and one of them finds it strange. The leader says that these things are really moving, that they aren't normal Scarecrows, and declares that they are monsters. They actually approach with scythes and other weapons in hand, and ask what they should do, noting that they are all monsters. But they don't think there was a dungeon break, so how could they be there? After a while, they question what these things are, as they have never seen anything like this, not even inside a portal. And the leader says he doesn't know either, since they left in such a hurry that most of his subordinates aren't there. He knew this request was strange, and says he's going to show them what happens when someone tries to mess with the Vipers. But then one of them speaks to his Ryong, and he asks what's up, and he tells him about it, wondering if it's an eyelash. He says he finally found it, and if the story behind the rice is true, it will make him rich. So, he orders them to put as much rice as they can into the cars so they can get out of there, because if the mothers are restricted to the plantation only, so he assumes the deposit must be safe and heads towards it. But as soon as he steps into a certain area, he is blown up and thrown into the air, which everyone finds strange. He falls down, completely injured, and he questions why there are landmines planted there. He realizes they intentionally placed mines in front of the deposit today, and they wonder who would do such a thing. Then the Braba appears, and Jagedd confronts the thieves, saying that the entry permission is invalid. They question why this is there, because that area is part of Zhongzhou's portal, the Spine Jag. and he is given the mission to exterminate them all. The next morning, they are tied up next to a sign, and that sign discusses the doctrines of life and fertility, stating that the first harvest must be shaped like the goddess and sacrificed as an offering. And the second order is not to urinate in the fields. Like and hype the video so YouTube knows too. And without further ado, let's get into this absurd manga. At the beginning, our protagonist says he has been reincarnated into a fantasy world, noticing he's in the body of a young child. And he sees surprised by that, as he defeated an archdemon with a single blow, its head sent flying. And so the protagonist tells the girl to get up, urging her to be brave, saying that now is not the time to fall, telling her, but using fertilizer is allowed. The third order is to arrange the scarecrows and dress them in hats and clothes. And the fourth order is to sing while harvesting. And it would be even better if the song's lyrics thanked divinity. And the fifth rule is to not skip meals, even if you are busy. Also, there's another rule that states the most important thieves die. And with that, the Viper Squad was successfully arrested. I definitely wasn't expecting the crazy guy, after living 300 years killing demons, would go to Earth to promote his wacky gods and manage to save anything, much less that he would pick up a completely crazy little robot. And if you want the continuation, for sure, leave a like and subscribe, and I'll bring it to you, because there's a lot of story to unfold here. After all, this is chapter 18, and it goes on for who knows how long. There's a lot to cover, and it all depends on you, and I'll see you in the next video. She gets up and fights. The two don't understand anything and ask who he is, and the protagonist is shining between the two of them, in front of that demon, and says that he is King Leon Hard, the Knight of the Glorious Knights, and the agent who carries the will of the sacred temples, Leon Dragonia, Leon Hars. But then he turns to them completely naked, and so, when he reaches 300 years old, he discovers more people. And it is said that he came across the 3 hackers, and also received a system notification saying that he defeated all the demons, leaving 0 remaining out of all possible ones. And so the Night King returned. And so it is said that a portal opened in the middle of the city, and the portal's rank was an unidentifiable black. And the Korean Hunter Association and the World Hunter Association requested that the nation's large guilds participate in the raid, but the requests were denied because the portal's difficulty was unknown. But in the end, the government ordered the Korean Hunter Association to enter first, which was basically a death sentence. And then what she saw there was that guy, a naked guy, killing those monsters alone. And so Associate Han calls him, asking her to respond to the situation. And that's Han Harry, Associate Manager of the Korean Hunter Association. And Kim Johnson appears, handing her something to drink, saying that she is tired. And the girl agrees that she is. And he asks how it's going, and she says that no one believes her. He thinks it was a desperate situation because it was a black rank demon portal, and even the archdemon was there. And to come back from there, alive without the help of other guilds, is already a miracle. But to finish everything on top of that is too much, and all because of one man, and that man is sitting in front of them all, wearing an outfit given by the association. And so the girl asks if he is a survivor from inside the portal, and Joao Sor thinks he is a survivor from another world. They say that there were some people who managed to survive in the portal realm, and it is said that the portal's that quiet ceiling sees candles instead of LED lights. It was a fantasy world behind in terms of civilization compared to Earth, but looking at the house, he thinks it's a very rich house, and for a homeless orphan who appeared all over the world in the last 30 years had some similarities. And the truth is that the theme was either of a world on its way to destruction or of a world already destroyed. And sometimes survivors manage to return to Earth, while maintaining the unbelievable strength they achieved in the demonic realm, returned exhausted. And that's why the government does its best to meet the needs of the survivors, and creates plans to be able to recruit them. Then Han says that they need to recruit him no matter what, because that guy is incredibly strong. And John S. thinks that it really doesn't matter what they do, and says that even an S-rank hunter needs to risk his life when facing a high-rank demon. But he killed an archdemon with a single attack, a monster that even the most skilled S-rank hunters fear. He didn't just kill one, he killed several of those who were there. He completely destroyed that monster, remaining very calm and focused while fighting him. But then he says that what worries him most now is the cultural difference, because, from the way he talked about himself, he must be royalty or something like that. And Han says she thinks everything will be fine, but John S. just asks her why she thinks that, and she says that she could tell from his voice that he is a very good person. But at that exact moment, the protagonist is calling a guy an insect, looking very pissed off. causing a glass wall to fly out from inside, keeping everyone in the dark about what's happening. And the big surprise is that he accomplished this with a glass that even stops monsters, which no one can believe. And the protagonist questions, humiliating, and would tarnish the glorious name of Leon Hart. Then, he questions whether she is truly a good person. Meanwhile, the protagonist is relentlessly making the bald man apologize and wonders if this might be a culture shock. And so, 15 minutes before everything explodes, he's talking to that bald guy. And he thinks this is kind of strange, but considers it a gift, since he was an orphan who worked so hard in his 20 seconds that he died of exhaustion. And after that, he was reincarnated in another world and became both king and knight of another kingdom for over a century. And after conquering the demon world, he hunted demons for 200 years, adding up to a total of 300 years. And he thinks it's a relief that, died from overworking, this is a pretty decent place to be reincarnated. He says there was another reason he thought he was born into a rich house. The child's biological mother was extremely beautiful, and he doesn't even have any memory of that location. Then, the bald man starts talking to the protagonist, calling him by name in a somewhat awkward manner. And the protagonist thinks that, even so, it wouldn't be advantageous to reveal the fact that he used to be an earthling, thinks that assuming the identity of a rich knight who lived for 300 years in another world is much better than dying at the young age of 20 from overwork. And so, he starts ordering the bald man to call him Your Majesty, calling him a commoner. The bald guy doesn't understand anything, but still thinks it's better to just accept what this crazy guy is saying. The protagonist notices he's playing along, wondering if he's just a nice guy or if the government is. Being cautious about how they approach survivors like him, the guy then talks about the Black Portal, or rather, the world he came from, saying that's where he first encountered his hunters, asking if he killed all those demons. The protagonist confirms that he did, asking if he's already forgotten. And so, the man questions what he means by that. The protagonist states that he killed all those evil species and protected the honor of the knights, and says that he orders him to be his temporary secretary, saying that he should consider it a privilege to record this glorious incident. But at that, the bald man becomes even more nervous, noticing that there really is a cultural dissonance at play. Very big. But the protagonist dives headfirst even further into this craziness, asking if there aren't any etiquette rules for how they're treating Riesa there, because he's basically saying he's hungry. So the bald man thinks he must be starving, and says he's going to ask someone to prepare a meal right now. And so the protagonist says that, in addition, he must tell him everything about that world, as he needs to find out what happened to Earth while he was away. And the bald man says he will explain, saying that the nightmare began suddenly 30 years ago, and portals began to open all around the world, and monsters and demons came out of them. And after that, they were in a constant state of emergency. And after many losses, they realized that each portal has a completion mission, and that when a portal is left unattended, a dungeon break occurs, and monsters invade the Earth. Spoke to him in the language of that world. He says that, fortunately, it seemed like he wouldn't have any problems in his future love life. And so, 3 years later, he's being curious, looking out the window, and he sees a world, Earth. Then he says the food is ready and has arrived. And the protagonist then lets him get up to get the food while he thinks, saying that this is kind of different because demons invaded his world like mold on the roof after a heavy rain. But that place contains portals with specific themes and missions, and he realizes that it's designed to train humans through trials, continuously improving the human race. And so, the bald man returns with the protagonist's food, and as soon as he sees it, he's amazed, noticing that it's bone broth boiled for hours and covered with salt, black pepper, and some crispy okra. And it's his tang, and he mentions that when he was a worker on Earth, his lion tang was like soul food to him, and people are conditioned to enjoy the foods they already prefer instead of trying new ones. But Lon forced himself to swallow it, salivating in his mouth. He then questions what it is, pretending he doesn't know, and the bald man says that they call it siolang there, and that it's known as the soul food of the common people. And that's when he started to freak out at the bald man, calling him an insect, asking how he dares to tarnish the glorious name of Leon Hart, questioning how he dares to serve a commoner's dish to a noble, and asking if this is how the kingdom treats a noble from another kingdom. Then, he elaborates on the persona he's adopting. Leon Dragonia, Leon Hart, royalty from another world, the goddess's representative, the guardian of the Holy Grail, and the wielder of the sacred blade and spear. And the bald man even he tries to explain, but the protagonist orders him to leave, calling him an inferior commoner. He declares that he is the one who defeated Malos, the demon lord, along with the other 23 archdemons. the archenemy of demons who eliminated millions, the very incarnation of history of the 300-year war, and finally, a regressor who was once an Earthling. After returning to Earth after 300 years, he thinks that everything is a general mess, much like Brazil, because there isn't a proper religious faith. He believes enlightening the minds of commoners is the royal family's duty, even though he returned to Earth and remains a king. And after some time, they finally manage to